Chapter 1102. For the next few days, the company was much more peaceful. The higher-ups would also call Helly and Weiwei from time to time. The general idea was to ask Madame to keep an eye on President Zhu. If there was nothing else, she must not let the old man run to the company. Helly and Vivian felt that His Highness was very good at managing his subordinates. He could make people so afraid of him. In comparison, the group of rough men in her house were simply hooligans. However, sometimes, hooligans were very useful. For example, trending. Push little boss up. I know that even if you don't tell me. Get out of the way, watch me steal an account. What are you talking about? Just spend money to buy a topic. Helly and Vivian finally came back and saw that the rough men were holding laptops in their hands. Their expressions were very crazy. People who didn't know better would think that they were playing League of Legends, but in fact, they were just trying to gain popularity. Bailey Shangxia officially debuted and took on a web drama, in which he played a little vampire. For Bailey Shangxia, this was simply acting in his own character. Unfortunately, the blood bag given to him by the film crew was filled with tomato juice, not fresh food. If it was hot blood, he would prefer to drink it. However, the trending photos weren't Bailey Shangxia's stills, but when Qingchen went to visit, Bailey Shangxia was still wearing a 19th-century tuxedo. His two white fangs were exposed, and he didn't care about the sun shining on him. He lowered his head and tied the straps on Qingchen's school bag. According to the rules that people in the industry wouldn't violate, the person who took the photo didn't take Qingchen's face. However, such a loving background image instantly flooded the entire internet. Thus, on this day, Bailey Shangxia had a new nickname, Nation's Brother. At 8 p.m. sharp. In the villa, rows of demons squatted in front of the TV, their eyes shining. When Helly and Vivian came back, she saw this scene. What are they doing? She couldn't figure it out, so she could only turn her head to ask His Highness. Beligaju only said 4 words, boosting ratings. Helly and Vivian silently turned her head and looked at those extremely serious and huge faces. Probably because the web drama started synchronizing, the demons' expressions became more and more focused. Even the butler in black clenched the tray in his hand and stared hard at the screen. A minute passed. Why haven't we seen His Highness? Fuck. A TV series to deceive demons. Bad review. Wait, don't get excited, maybe His Highness, he's out. It really is His Highness. Look at the advertisement below. Send a message to XXX to support your favorite actor. We'll send the message now. Why are you sending a text message? Take a closer look at who the director is. What's the director to do? Let's form a team to scare him tonight and let him add scenes for Little Highness. These few minutes are not enough to fill the gaps between our teeth. Damn, smart. Let's go. Let's go. The dark mass of demons floated away, forming a cloud that floated towards Dongqing. Helly and Vivian suddenly felt that whoever became the director of this series had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Directing a web drama and being scared by demons, it was really tough. That night, the director of this series felt the deep malice of the world towards him. Originally, the web drama was too popular, so he wanted to treat the crew to a meal, but drank too much, so he planned to go to the toilet. Once he entered the toilet, the scene changed. Other than the frightening panting, there was a shadow that appeared behind him from time to time. He kept feeling like someone was blowing cold air behind him, but when he turned around, there was nothing. This was the scariest thing. Also, he couldn't zip his pants up no matter how hard he tried. It was as if there was a hand blocking it. The director was scared and wanted to run out without caring about his pants, but the male actors who came in all stared at him. The next day, the rumor that the director didn't get married for so many years because he actually liked men spread throughout Hingdian studios. The demons thought proudly that this time, the director should have understood what they meant. Director. I don't understand at all. At the same time, there were rows of demons waiting for the live broadcast in the villa. This time, there were more scenes of the Little Highness, so the demons firmly believed that their threat was effective. Let's go again tonight. Hellion Vivian asked, why are we going again? If it's effective, of course we have to strengthen it. What if it's not effective? Then we have to go even more. Until the director is scared to add more scenes. Hellion Vivian. In other words, no matter how many scenes Shang Xie has, you will still go and scare the director, right? They know what they're doing. Beligaju was very dissatisfied that the woman in his arms put her attention elsewhere. His hand that was on Hellion Vivian's waist moved to the side. Is your mouth dry? Do you want to eat something? Okay. Hellion Vivian's stomach didn't have any obvious changes, but her appetite was very good. She wanted to eat something cold. This pregnancy was obviously different from the previous ones. She was not interested in meat anymore. Instead, she liked to eat vegetarian food. Beligaju specially bought a manner for Hellion Vivian to eat fresh vegetables. The dessert chef made ice cream from the fruits in the manor and put it in the fridge. In the hot summer, it was the most suitable to eat these. The food that Hellion Vivian wanted to eat was basically prepared. Beligaju usually had a finance book in one hand and was responsible for feeding her with the other. Hellion Vivian always felt that this posture was not right to eat like this, so she took the ice cream cup and ate with both hands. Half of her body leaned on Beligaju's back, and from time to time, she would feed him 1 or 2 mouthfuls. This was the right way to behave like a domineering CEO. His Highness had never liked to eat sweet food. After 2 mouthfuls, he stopped. His slender fingers gently stroked Hellion Vivian's hair, and his sitting posture was as condescending as usual. Once luxury seeped into one's bones, even in a lazy state, Beligaju's elegance was still there. The two of them nestled on the big sofa. One of them ate ice cream, while the other read a book with her eyes lowered. Her fingers were gentle, and they never left the other person's furry head. The soft light shone on the two of them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. From afar, Hellion Vivian looked like a pet that Beligaju had carefully raised. The sweetness of strawberries and lemons still lingered in the air. Even the tip of her tongue seemed to be stained with the taste of ice cream. Facts proved that the relic that the old monk had given Hellion Vivian was indeed there. In the days after that, she never vomited. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment and reached out to touch her lower abdomen. This child was indeed fated with Buddha. Chapter 1103. In fact, it was not strange that the flesh and blood of the phoenix in the Buddhist world had Buddhist affinity. Bailey Shangxie had a pure devil physique. Although Hellion Qinchin had spiritual energy in her body, she was not fated to be Buddhist. Now that she had a child, she should be vegetarian and pray to Buddha. What are you thinking about? Beligaju turned his head and pinched Hellion Vivian's chin. Hellion Vivian put down the glass cup and lay on his lap casually. She rubbed against him comfortably. I'm thinking about the baby. She was so against you before because this child carries the gospel. Buddha. In the world, only His Highness would use such a mocking tone to pronounce this word. Hellion Vivian nodded. That's why she has to live in the temple on the mountain before she's 4 years old. That place won't have the resentment of the mortal world, so it's more suitable for her to grow up. Beligaju looked at her and knew that Hellion Vivian did not want to give the baby away. He pondered for a moment, then lowered his head and kissed her on the eyes. When you miss her, you can go to the mountain to see her at any time. It's best for a child who carries the gospel to not come into contact with the secular world. Helene Vivian reached out and touched her belly. She thought of something and smiled instantly. But the old monk also said that our baby is very healthy. That's enough. Let's go to the mountain some other day. We have to see the living environment there with our own eyes. Beligaju rubbed her hair with his fingers, then picked her up and put her in his arms. His voice was very calm and matter-of-fact. If the environment is not good, let's ask Shangxie to donate money to build it. He's grown up and should learn to support his family. Helene Vivian, in terms of education, His Highness was really a well-rounded talent. When they were having supper that day, Beligaju conveyed his intention to his eldest son. Bailey Shangxie was wiping his brother's mouth with a napkin. When he heard that they were going to build something for the baby in the future, he waved his pen and donated. Later, Helene Vivian asked His Highness to evaluate his eldest son. Beligaju only gave her one sentence, a fool with a lot of money. Helene Vivian. They were definitely not father and son. They were enemies. In short, the moment the two of them met, it was destined that the villa would not be peaceful. Bailey Shangxie, you haven't done the frog jump today. Our teacher said that this is abuse. As a family member, you can't treat your child like this. Are you human? Me. You. If you treat me like this again, I will take mother and the others and run away from home. Your mother and I are now legally husband and wife. You are at most an illegitimate child. Go and stay where you are. Yes, Bailey Shangxie was born before the two of them were married. To a certain extent, he was indeed an illegitimate child. Bailey Shangxie couldn't win against his black-hearted father, so he went to look for Helene Vivian. Imitating his brother, he lowered his head and touched Helene Vivian's stomach. The baby is so obedient, right, big brother? Qingchen looked up at him. Yes. Bailey Shangxie nodded coolly. As expected, apart from his father, everything in this family was so beautiful. Helene Vivian looked at the two little guys standing beside her. They turned their heads and put their little ears on her stomach. She thought it was funny. It's only been a month. I can't hear anything. The book says that pregnant people should eat more and sleep more. Qingchen began to explain. Also, you should pay attention to prenatal education. I'll read advanced math questions for the baby later. Helene Vivian. Wait a minute. Even your mother can't understand your advanced math problems. Can you not torture me like this, son? Father, mother doesn't seem to want to listen. Qingchen ran in front of Beligaju and said, this is not good. When the baby goes to kindergarten, he won't understand anything. Bailey Jiaju's slender fingers flicked his little forehead and calmly asked in reply, are you sure that your imperial mother's IQ is high enough to understand those advanced numbers that you're talking about? Helene Qingchen turned his little body and looked at Helene Vivian with disappointment. Then, he shook his little head and walked away. It was as if he was a child who couldn't be taught. Helene Vivian really wanted to pull the little one over and slap the table. If you have the ability, let's talk about how to make firearms. I'm good at this. What advanced math. What a waste of brain cells. Bailey Shangxie also felt that prenatal education was very important. Back then, he didn't do a good job of prenatal education and was tortured by his father every day. That was why he became like this now. It had to be said that Shangxie's self-awareness was very good. Mother, the best prenatal education for the baby is to stay away from father in the future. This was the conclusion that Bailey Shangxie came up with after thinking for a long time. Although it was a little worse than his wedding blessing, what he said was the truth. Beligaju didn't hold back this time. After all, it wasn't a wedding scene. He reached out and pulled the little devil up. With a faint smile, he said, "Let's go. Let's find a place to talk about prenatal education." Just like that, Bailey Shangxia was thrown into the bathtub with his clothes on. The little devil didn't like to be wet. However, Helian Qingchen saw that his brother was taking a bath. Without saying anything, he began to squeeze bubbles for Bailey Shangxia. He wanted to help his brother wipe his back. After all, during this period of time, it was very inconvenient for his brother to take a bath when he went to visit him. It was in Sichuan. The scenery was very good, but it meant that the living conditions were very poor. Therefore, he had to stand and use water to wash himself. After Helian Qingchen inspected the shooting site, he decided that in the future, he would bring money into every drama that his brother filmed. He heard that the game coins that Uncle Monkey and the others gave him could be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of real money. The guns that Brother L gave him were also very valuable. He saved up his pocket money every year. It should be enough to support his brother. After all, his brother was a newcomer. If he didn't bring money into the production, what if he met someone who wanted to sleep with him in the future? After the little one helped his brother wash his back, he told Helian Vivian about his worries. Helian Vivian no longer doubted that there was a problem with her education. She just wanted to ask, "Does anyone dare to sleep with your brother? That group of demons would have to dig up their ancestral graves. It's best that they don't dare. Otherwise, I would have to find a way to make them go bankrupt." After Qingchen said this sentence very seriously, he lowered his head and kissed Helian Vivian's stomach. "Baby, big brother and little brother are going to sleep. You should go to bed early too. You have to listen to Beauty Vivian. Good night." Helian Vivian was already very attracted by the little boy's cute appearance in the morning. She hugged his little body and kissed him for a while. She was once again warned by her son not to molest the little fresh meat. In this regard, Helian Vivian was very disapproving. However, when she was sleeping, she felt her stomach move very slightly. Chapter 1104. The next day. Helian Vivian felt the changes in her surroundings as she was pregnant with a baby with Buddha fate. First, some goldfish began to toss around inexplicably, as if they were about to jump over the dragon gate. Then, the devil dog no longer approached her, but went to His Highness. Helian Vivian slept soundly at night. She didn't know that her pregnancy would attract the covetous eyes of the demons. Once it was dark, all kinds of demons would be attracted outside the villa. To them, the child in Helian Vivian's belly was like a rose blooming in the dark, emitting a fatal fragrance. Even though they were warned by their own kind not to go to the villa in the suburbs of Beijing, there was a very bad guy living there, and no one could see what his real body was. For this tempting smell, they still came. Hiding under the swaying shade of the trees, pairs of scarlet eyes emitted greed, thinking that their disguise was flawless. "What's wrong?" Helian Vivian saw the man lying next to her stand up. She reached out and rubbed her eyes, indicating that she wanted to get up as well. Beligaju turned around and hugged her. He gently patted her back and kissed her hair with his thin lips. "Nothing. I'm going to drink some water. You can sleep for a while." She didn't need to follow him to drink water. Men were particular about freedom. Helian Vivian had been very sleepy recently, so after hearing His Highness's words, she turned her head and continued to sleep. Beligaju rubbed her hair with his fingers. When she was almost asleep, there was movement outside the window. One of the demon's hands had already touched the roses wrapped around the villa. He leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window, revealing a blood-red eye. "It's really fragrant. I haven't smelled such a fragrant smell in a long time. That man is really an eyesore. It seems that if I want to enjoy this delicacy, I have to get rid of a human first." The demon thought. Its black body moved, and its triangular snake tongue stretched out, intending to penetrate and swallow Beligaju, who was lying next to Hellion Vivian. However, before it could enter the villa, the man who was sitting there was gone. The demon's brown pupils suddenly shrank. What's going on? Where is he? Where did he go? This unexpected situation made the monster irritated. It scratched its head and turned around on the glass. Suddenly, a cold and graceful voice came from behind. Are you looking for me? The monster turned around. Behind it, the man's slender figure gradually revealed his demonic nature under the pure white moonlight. The black feathers fell to the ground along with the demon's Sanskrit chants. His internal organs were in pain from the shock. At this moment, the monster finally realized that something was wrong. It swung its tail and wanted to escape. Shwa! A soft sound rang out. The man's hand had already crushed his tail. His right hand, which was wearing a black glove, emitted a strong smell of blood in the darkness. It could not move. The place where the tail was connected seemed to be on fire, burning fiercely. All that was left of the novelty of hunting was an unprecedented fear. The man's face was still as handsome as before, but the black fog surging out from behind him had become incomparably clear at this moment. That was the group of demons from Mount Buzhou. The monster's eyes widened, but before it could scream, it was silently swept away. Only half of its bleeding tail was left on the ground. Beligaju stood under the flower tree. With an indifferent expression, he took off the black glove on his hand and threw it to the side. It was as if what he had just dealt with was not a big monster, but a pile of trash. The demons knew that recently, some blind things often came to the villa because of the child in the princess's belly. He had clearly told them what would happen if they entered this generation, but they did not listen. For the past 2 days, their master had personally taken action. Every time, they would be reduced to ashes. Why bother? After Beligaju entered the villa, he did not leave for the bedroom. Instead, he went to take a shower first. When he held Hellion Vivian in his arms again, his entire body was already filled with the pleasant smell of mint. Hellion Vivian knew that he was back, so her left hand naturally wrapped around him. As expected, hugging a certain highness to sleep was the most comfortable. Just like that, more and more fodder was buried under the rose tree. Gradually, the villa in the suburbs of the capital became famous. The first to notice it were the exorcists who had lived in the capital for a long time. Although they were not as famous as the Pei and Si families, they were from a prestigious sect. The number of demons in the capital was decreasing rapidly. Although this was a good sign, it was too strange. Moreover, they had investigated and found that the demons who had cultivated for thousands of years had all disappeared from this place. 2 people in black cloaks who were dressed as exorcists raised their heads and looked at the noble villa in front of them. One of them walked over, narrowed his eyes, and pressed the doorbell. Bailey Shangxie was still tying a napkin for his brother. When he heard the sound, he glanced at the black-clothed butler beside him. The black-clothed butler carried a tray and walked to the door. The door slowly opened, and the 2 exorcists who were covered in spiritual aura entered his sight. They seemed to be chasing someone. There was still some mud on the soles of their shoes. May I ask who the 2 of you are? The 2 exorcists were dressed very formally. One of them was even holding an exorcist gun in his hand. He moved the gun to his left and smiled. Hello, sir. We are the special police. We are chasing a fugitive. He should be around. We were worried that he would run into the villa, so we wanted to come in and take a look to ensure his safety. Since they are the police, let them in. It was clearly a child's voice, but there was an indescribable evil in it. The exorcists looked to the side and saw Bailey Shangxie, who was sitting at the dining table and feeding his younger brother. Bailey Shangxie was now a popular child star in the mainland. He was wearing the tiger head pajamas that his brother had bought for him. He did not look as cold as he did on the screen. However, the two exorcists still felt that something was wrong. Would an ordinary child speak in such a tone? Even if the other party was a star, wasn't he a little too mature? What do the two of you want to investigate? Bailey Shangxia wiped the corner of his mouth. Although the appearance of his thin lips was slightly curved, it still gave people the feeling that he was up to no good. The exorcists looked at each other and smiled. We are just looking. There shouldn't be a problem with the first floor. The doors and windows are all locked and it is very empty. The second floor looks a little deep. I wonder who lives there. It's my father and mother. Bailey Shangxia stood up. Although he was still very young, he gave people an indescribable sense of oppression. The two of you shouldn't be the police, right? Chapter 1105. The exorcist's expression changed. He slowly turned his head, as if he was worried that his identity would be exposed. Bailey Shangxia was still smiling. He held a transparent glass cup in his small hand, but there was a black gemstone ring on his thumb. He looked luxurious everywhere. I'm just joking. Why did you stop? The exorcists also laughed dryly. Bailey Shangxia continued, but you can't go upstairs. My mother is still sleeping. She's pregnant recently and needs to rest. They couldn't go to the second floor. The exorcists paused and looked at each other again. Little friend, we're worried that there will be criminals hiding on the second floor. After all, the space up there is big. Sometimes, criminals will specially choose this kind of place to attack. It's better to search. Bailey Shangxia glanced at them and then slowly put down the white napkin. His voice was very calm. Since you insist, I'll bring the two of you up to walk around. As he spoke, he lowered his head and said to Qingchen, brother will be back soon. Go and ask mother to go downstairs to eat breakfast. Don't eat beef anymore. Your stomach can't digest it later. You have to eat digestive tablets. You don't like that taste. Okay. Qingchen was wearing cow pajamas. She stopped eating when she said she would. She was very obedient. Her white and tender little tail even made a sound when she ran. When the two exorcists saw this scene, they felt that this villa was even more strange. There were so many unclean things around, but only this place didn't have a trace of demonic aura. Moreover, the demons they caught along the way had said that the demons that disappeared for no reason recently were all gone because they went to the villa. But why were the two children here not affected at all? Moreover, they were even more polite than ordinary children. What does the two of you look like? Bailey Shangxia led the two of them into the depths of the villa and asked casually, I don't think the news mentioned it. The exorcists were still looking around in the dark. When they heard his question, their gazes landed on his little tiger's head. It's a big guy. It's very cruel when it kills people. It's better if you don't see it. Oh. Bailey Shangxia stood at the side, his eyes shining. I hope you can find that criminal soon and bring him to justice. However, my mother doesn't like the smell of blood, especially now that she's pregnant. So, it's better for the two of you not to come to the villa so easily during this period of time. The warning was so obvious that it was hard to ignore. The exorcists narrowed their eyes and looked at the little boy in front of them again. However, he just smiled evilly. We should be almost done. My father taught me that I must know how to treat guests. The housekeeper has prepared tea and snacks. If you two don't mind, you can stay and have some. The exorcist desperately wanted to know what this little brat was up to. There's something wrong with this celebrity child. One of the exorcists lowered his voice. The other exorcist nodded and stroked his own exorcist spear. Right, I forgot to remind the two of you. Bailey Shangxie turned around and looked at the person holding the spear. Our family doesn't like to use force the most, so it's best for the police uncle to put away this spear. Otherwise, when the time comes, the spear will be gone, and so will the person. The exorcist's arms suddenly froze. Bailey Shangxie continued to lead the way. The moment he lowered his eyes, an evil light emitted from them. It was a pity that such delicious people couldn't be eaten. It was his principle not to kill in front of his mother. The exorcists walked around but didn't find any Yin energy in the villa. But it was because of this that they became more and more flustered. Those who understood Yin and Yang knew that the more powerful a person was, the better they were at hiding their aura. This place was obviously clean. It didn't seem like it. And this celebrity boy in front of them was definitely not simple. In the living room on the first floor, Helene Vivian sat on the dining chair and watched her eldest son come down with two people dressed as exorcists. She raised her eyebrows. There are guests at home. The two uncles said that they are the police. After Bailey Shangxie finished speaking, he took the small spoon in Qingqin's hand, scooped a piece of cream mousse for her, and fed it to her younger brother. The invisible coldness around them finally disappeared, and the two exorcists gradually relaxed their grip. Hello, madam. We are here to catch criminals. Recently, this area has not been very peaceful. I wonder if you have noticed anything strange when you sleep at night. Helene Vivian chuckled. No, I sleep very well every night. What about other situations? For example, do you hear any abnormal sounds? The exorcist asked. There had to be something wrong. When Helene Vivian heard this, she put down the wooden chopsticks in her hand with a hint of playfulness. In the past, she was the one who asked others these questions. She didn't expect that one day, she would be the one being asked. Seeing that she didn't immediately speak, the exorcist thought that she had thought of something, so he wanted to speak again. At this moment, a man walked down the stairs. He was wearing a well-ironed black suit and a pair of black gloves on his hands. He seemed to have just finished dealing with something and was about to throw away the gloves on his hands. This man reeked of blood. Although it was very faint, it was indeed there. The exorcist narrowed his eyes and looked at Beligaju. The man didn't even look at them. He walked directly in front of Helene Vivian and reached out to stroke her fluffy head. Why are you awake so early today? The police are here. Qingqin asked me to come down for breakfast. Helene Vivian bit into a bun and fed Beligaju a bite. The police. Bailey Jiaju was never one to reject Helene Weiwei. He swallowed the soft white flower in his mouth and set his gaze on the two exorcists. He curled his thin lips into a faint smile and said, It just so happens that there have been some ignorant people coming over recently. Both of you can be of some use. There was a hidden meaning in his words. Could it be that the demons that disappeared were because of him? The two exorcists held the exorcist guns in their hands tightly. One of them turned his back and drew a yellow talisman. He wanted to make Beligaju reveal his true form when he wasn't paying attention. Unexpectedly, as soon as the yellow talisman was drawn, it was blocked by Qingqin's intentional action of drinking soup. Damn it! I missed. The exorcist gritted his teeth and watched as the man's cold gaze fell on the two of them. The other exorcist pressed his companion's hand. Don't make any more moves. Be careful not to alert the enemy. Chapter 1106. Hearing this, the exorcist with the talisman could only stare at Beligaju. He lowered his arm that was about to raise again. The yellow talisman in his palm moved and was hidden in his wide sleeve. Helene Vivian acted as if she did not see the movement just now. She looked up with a faint smile and said, Officers, you can describe the murderer's appearance. We can inform the police at any time if we see him. Because the murderer escaped in the middle of the night, we don't know his exact height and appearance. We have to wait for the identification department to send a photo to confirm. The older exorcist smiled and took out a business card. If you notice anything wrong, madam, you can call us on this number. Especially if you notice anything strange about the people next to you, you must inform us immediately. If there's nothing else, my colleagues and I will take our leave first. We're very sorry to have disturbed you and your family's meal. As he spoke, the exorcist glanced at Bailey Jiaju, who was standing beside him. The man's eyes were indifferent, and there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. It seemed to be a faint mockery, as if they were ants in front of him. The exorcist's eyes darkened. They brushed past Bailey Shangxie, who was still feeding Qingqin. The latter's eyes were shining. It was obvious that he was hungry. Helly and Vivian stood up with a smile. I'll send the two officers off. The father and son put away their thoughts at the same time. Okay. When the exorcist saw that it was Helly and Vivian who came to send them off, he had a countermeasure in his heart. Walking out of the villa, they saw a courtyard covered with falling white petals. The two exorcists did not leave immediately. Instead, they mysteriously brought Helly and Wei Wei to the side and asked, Madam, is there anything different about your family recently? For example, are they interested in bright red meat, or do they often sleepwalk and look for food in the middle of the night? They don't like to eat meat. They only like to drink blood and devour souls. Helly and Vivian did not say the rest of her words. The exorcist frowned. Madam, perhaps it's a little rude to say this. We suspect that your family has. There are no ghosts at our bungalow. There is no sound of glass beads or children crying on the second floor at night. The faucet in the bathroom is turned on tight, and no water came out. The people at home did not eat too much for no reason, and they did not morph into another person. Helly and Vivian supported her chin with one hand and looked at them lazily. If these problems really arise, I can solve them myself. There is no need to trouble the police. The exorcist who was interrupted was stunned. No, madam, you can't solve these problems yourself. Actually, my colleagues and I are not police officers at all. I do, Helly and Vivian interrupted him, because I'm also an exorcist. The two of them were stunned again, and the words they wanted to say were completely stuck in their throats. Helly and Vivian moved her finger. With the help of the water stains on her fingertips, she drew a glowing talisman seal. The Buddhist aura seemed to appear in front of them. That was the divine exorcism incantation. The exorcist's eyes widened. He could not believe that someone could draw a long-lost divine incantation with just a casual drawing. You! Helly and Vivian retracted her hand and smiled faintly. I opened a Taobao shop and often help others deal with unclean things. My Taobao shop has a good reputation on the internet. The number of orders accepted and the positive ratings are very high. In the future, if the two of you have big orders that you can't deal with, you can come to me. However, my family doesn't like to be disturbed. Perhaps the murderer you're looking for is somewhere else. If the two of you want to save your lives, give up the idea of coming back at night. Otherwise, I won't need him to do anything. I'll make you regret investigating this bungalow. After saying this, Helly and Vivian turned around and walked away. The exorcists really could not figure out the identity of the person in front of them. They did not understand why there was such a powerful exorcist hidden in this bungalow. Who was she? There was no record of her in the yin and yang world. Damn it. One of the exorcists watched Helly and Vivian walk into the bungalow and clenched his fists. There's clearly something wrong with that man and the child just now. With her around, we can't enter the bungalow. Another exorcist said in a deep voice, it seems that we can only wait for the other party to come out before we can make a move. That little boy is a celebrity. It's impossible for him not to come out of the bungalow, the exorcists were right. Bailey Shangxie did have to go out to work. At noon, his agent called. Bailey Shangxie had changed into a black t-shirt and cropped shorts. He was wearing a pair of white shoes, and his hands were filled with tinkling things. Originally, his appearance was the type that was stunning. Now, he was wearing a boy's red sun hat and a pair of big black sunglasses on his small face. He was standing there waiting for the nanny van. The weather was hot today, so he did not ask his younger brother to send him off. Although he was young, he looked like a young master standing there. He was a little like the vampire he played in the web drama. His skin was excessively fair. The exorcists turned sideways and the yellow talismans in their hands moved slightly. They flew towards Bailey Shangxie from all four directions. In their opinion, Bailey Shangxie was not as powerful as that mysterious man. No matter how old the demon was, the two of them would definitely be able to trap him if they worked together. Moreover, the sun was at its brightest now. Even if the other party had some skills, he would definitely not be able to escape. However, what they did not expect was that the moment the yellow talismans touched the corner of Bailey Shangxie's clothes, the entire talisman would spontaneously combust without any fire. The blue-green flames burned in the eyes of the exorcists, turning into disbelief and astonishment. How was this possible? The array that the two of them had set up together was broken just like that. Bailey Shangxie looked at their expressions and slowly curved his thin lips. "Police uncle, you don't seem to have taken my warning seriously at all. I thought that after Mother sent you out, you would dispel those stupid thoughts in your heads. Now it seems that you are really not afraid of death." The two exorcists took a big step back. Before the little boy made a move, the demonic hound that appeared in front of him made them unable to withstand the soaring demonic aura, not to mention the mist that was emitted from the little boy's back. You are a high-level demon. Damn it. How could there be a high-level demon in the city? And he was actually the most popular youth idol. Bailey Shangxie had no intention of killing these two people. Looking at their chaotic breaths, he just turned sideways and continued to wait for the car. His side profile was very cool. "You can't even beat me, and you still want to deal with my father. I advise you to give up early and not disturb my mother's pregnancy." Chapter 1107. You're all demons. Your mother and brother are both humans. The exorcist clutched his chest in discomfort. They never thought that they would be suppressed by a little boy to the point of being unable to move. Moreover, the real powerful person had not even made a move yet. Humans and demons walk different paths. You shouldn't live together at all. The exorcist roared the last sentence in a deep voice. It was also this sentence that made Bailey Shangxie's beautiful almond-shaped eyes narrow dangerously. "You're courting death. Brother, don't listen to them." A clear and tender voice sounded from behind the three of them. It turned out that Enchanting was worried that Bailey Shangxie would be bitten by mosquitoes while filming outside. She ran out of the villa with a bottle of toilet water in her two little hands. Compared to Bailey Shangxie, his whole body exuded the scent of a human. The exorcist endured the pain and said, "Little kid, we're doing this for your own good. Your brother is still young now. When he grows up, he will hunt. High-level demons like human souls the most. The closer a person is to them, the more they will become their target. Other than your mother, you're the most dangerous." Hearing the exorcist's words, Bailey Shangxie had the thought of killing for the first time in his life. His eyes were stained with blood. He would never hurt his brother and mother. Looking at Bailey Shangxie's expression, Enchanting knew that his anger was rising. She tiptoed and reached out to touch Bailey Shangxie's head, just like when she was in her mother's stomach. It was only then that Bailey Shangxie calmed down. The redness in his eyes had also faded a lot. He pulled the little one's hand down and instructed sternly, "Hurry up and go back. The sun is shining brightly outside. It's too hot." In Bailey Shangshia's heart, no one in the world was as obedient as his brother and the baby that was about to be born. They must be raised well. Yes. Hellion Qingchen had always been a little gentleman, but this did not mean that he was someone to be trifled with. The little one walked in front of the two exorcists and stopped in his tracks. "If you still want to develop your exorcism career here, it's best that you don't come and affect my family's lives. As for what you said, I don't believe that my brother would lose his mind and hurt me and my mother. With Imperial Father around, such things will not happen. Moreover, my brother is wearing black earrings that suppress the magic in his ears. He is not a killing machine. He knows who can and can't kill. My brother is very good to me. If you are being unreasonable, I will let you taste the taste of bankruptcy." An exorcist was not a saint. There was no one in the world who did not love money. Moreover, things were different now. The more outstanding an exorcist group was, the more money they needed. Only then could they interact with the upper class of society and eliminate the remaining demons in the city more conveniently. However, the two exorcists had never expected to encounter such a situation. How could humans stand on the side of demons? Although they had formed a family, their innate nature could not be changed. Demons were destined to only feed on souls and blood. These two people could not be safe for the rest of their lives. It was not that they had not encountered similar situations before. Under normal circumstances, after knowing that the other party was a demon, no human would have the courage to continue living with them. Because one day, if they didn't face separation, they would be eaten. The latter was very likely. After all, demons never took human lives seriously. But Hellion Qinchen's protection was so obvious that there was even a hint of hostility in it. This made it impossible for the two exorcists to find a breakthrough. They thought they understood demons, but how could they know? Once there was someone they wanted to protect, whether it was a human or a demon, they would learn to restrain themselves. The kind of restraint that would rather hurt themselves than let the other party get sunburned. This was how Bailey Shangxia treated his family. Not to mention how His Highness restrained Hellion Vivian. "Stop talking, go back quickly. In the future, put something on before you go out. Where did the butler go? He doesn't know how to take good care of you." Bailey Shangxia reached out his hand to block the sun for Hellion Qingchen. If it was in the past, he would definitely not do such a silly thing. However, the person being protected was his younger brother. This reason alone was enough. When he was in his mother's stomach, he knew that he was different from others. His father did not like him. Because of his arrival, his father lost his mother for 3 years. But there was no other way. He was a demon. She was even more of a demon than her father. He had seen the demons in the demon world that no one raised. They ate whatever they saw. It was very disgusting. He did not want to be like that. Therefore, from the moment he was born, he began to tug at the corner of his father's clothes. Wherever his father went, he would follow his father. Because in the future, as long as he followed his father, he would see his mother and brother again one day. He missed the days when he was in his mother's stomach. His mother would protect him, and his brother would talk to him. However, he thought about it carefully and realized that he did not like humans. He felt that humans were too dirty. Those schemes hidden in his heart, he thought that he could hide them from everyone. In fact, they were very stupid. Humans were also afraid of him. Once his eyes emitted a red light, they would look at him as if he was a monster. It was clear that he did nothing. The only people who would not be afraid of him were his younger brother and mother. His younger brother often protected him. He was always worried that he would be slept with and that he would be bitten by mosquitoes. In fact, no mosquitoes dared to bite him at all. Those low-level creatures would hit the wall after seeing him. His father had told him that the more he cared about someone, the less he wanted to show his true self in front of them. This was the way demons did things. It was the opposite of humans. He did not believe it in the past, but now he did. In order to stay by his mother and brother's side, he rarely killed people anymore. However, those two exorcists still said such things. He was very unhappy. Until he heard his younger brother seriously protect him, Bailey Shangxie was relieved. Anyway, they were all insignificant humans. They could say whatever they wanted. If they provoked him, his father would always deal with them. The pure black nanny car drove over from afar. Bailey Shangxie put his hands in his pockets. Seeing Qingshan walk into the villa, he did not look at the exorcists anymore and jumped into the car. The gold medal manager was still in the car. When he saw the two people standing outside, he looked up from the documents. Who is that? It was rare for someone to appear in the villa where the CEO lived. Someone who is looking for trouble with Dad. After Bailey Shangxie said this, he put on his hat, leaned on the seat, and closed his eyes to rest. Chapter 1108. Hearing this, the manager rolled down the window and sized up the two exorcists with a pitiful look. Although he didn't know the other party's identity or what had happened, just the fact that they had provoked CEO Ju meant that they wouldn't end well. The exorcists didn't understand the meaning in the manager's eyes. The two of them were injured. If they continued to force themselves, it would only make their situation more dangerous. Moreover, until now, that unfathomable man hadn't even made a move. This situation obviously didn't benefit them at all. The two exorcists looked at each other and decided to go back first. However, the manager was right about one thing. The consequences of provoking a certain highness were usually not very good. The exorcists originally wanted to go back first to get reinforcements. After all, they couldn't let a high-level demon devour demons in the city like this. If that was the case, there would be a day when they couldn't clean up the mess. However, as soon as the two of them walked into the hall, they saw the man they wanted to deal with sitting on the main seat. He supported his chin with one hand, his diamond-like fair skin and the black feathers falling from the sky finally revealed his overwhelming demonic nature. You! The exorcists were shocked. Even their ink-colored pupils started to shake. A person was lying at the man's feet. That was the most powerful exorcist in the AO family. There were screams all around, but there was no smell of blood. Sitting next to the man was their master. Unlike when he saw demons in the past, their master's face was pale. You two, come here. Their master's voice was trembling. The exorcists didn't dare to resist. They walked over and looked at Beligaju warily. You are not allowed to go to this gentleman's villa in the future. Do you understand? The exorcists didn't understand. The other party was clearly a demon, but their master was going to let him go just like that. The old man couldn't explain so much to his two disciples. He leaned on his walking stick and his beard flew up. Say yes. The two exorcists clenched their hands and lowered their eyes. Yes, master. When the old man heard this promise, he turned to Beligaju and said, These two children are still young and don't know the rules. I promise you that something like this will never happen again. Beligaju chuckled softly. His graceful voice slowly flowed out. He stood up and still didn't make a move. The surging black fog behind him transformed into thousands of demons, sweeping towards the two exorcists. It was like the afternoon of the dusk of the gods, the demonic energy overshadowing the heavenly Tao. Such a scene was only heard of in books. They had never really seen it. Their limbs were numb to a certain extent. They didn't even dare to move. The two exorcists could no longer describe what they were feeling right now. Watching the godlike man walk past them, they could only break out in cold sweat. They didn't even have the strength to raise their hands. Just the demons behind him alone could easily devour the entire AO clan in an instant. How could there be so many of them? He was just a demon. How could so many great demons follow him willingly? The exorcists had too many questions to ask, but most of them were unwillingness. After Beligaju left, the temperature in the room seemed to have returned. The bone-chilling coldness finally disappeared. But it was because of this that the two exorcists felt very incompetent. Master! Why didn't you let us make a move? The old man glared at them. You still want to make a move? Do you know who that person is? Why did you make a move? Do you think you're living too peacefully? Do you want to die? The two exorcists knew that their master was right. The pressure on their chests was still there. The scene just now was unforgettable. The old man stroked his chest and continued, "Why do you think he appeared here? He even arrived here earlier than you. He's using this method to tell you that if he wants to crush the AO family, it's just a matter of raising his hand. Do you still want to make a move on him? Do you want the entire AO family to die with you?" Hearing this, one of the exorcists finally calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, "Master, who is he?" "The king who fell from the heavenly Tao into the demon world." The old man's voice was long. "You and I should be glad that he has something to hold him back now. Otherwise, according to his temper back then, from the moment you stepped into the AO family, you would only see a pile of flesh and bones." The exorcists widened their eyes. "Hold him back. Master, are you talking about the mother and son in the villa?" "That's right. That's the hold that reminds him not to make a move. And Ran, and Lu, listen to me. You can investigate anywhere, but don't investigate the villa." The old man's eyes were shining. As long as that mother and son pair make a mistake, the world will be in chaos. That has never been his weakness, but what little humanity he has left. He hasn't massacred the AO family now because he doesn't want his wife to be unhappy. But if you still dare to disturb their lives, the AO family will be gone. The two young exorcists were a little stunned when they heard that. They had always thought that if they lived with a demon, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. But who would have thought that this would be the result? Could a human really hold back a demon? After the old man finished instructing them, he was still worried, so he called for someone to let these two juniors rest. Although he was old, he had only heard of that person. Today, when he saw him, he knew that other than having the evil of a demon, he also had extraordinary means. He didn't kill his two disciples in the villa. Instead, he went straight to the AO family. Did he want to test them? Not at all. He was telling them, once he makes a move, he will immediately eliminate the entire AO family. This was even more ruthless than directly beating their two disciples into ashes in the villa. He was the most elegant man in the world, but he was incomparably terrifying. If the AO family still wanted to have what they had now, they must not provoke this person. The hour hand slid across the smooth surface. Hellion Vivian woke up from her afternoon nap and sat on the soft carpet with Qingshan, playing Plants vs. Zombies. During this time, Qingshan woke up 3 times to get fruits for Hellion Vivian. Eat more. Beligaju was not here, so Qingshan consciously took the responsibility of taking care of Hellion Vivian. One of the reasons was to let her eat more. Hellion Vivian blocked the little one's hand, raised her eyebrows and asked, "Where is your father?" Little Qingshan lied without batting an eyelid. He said he was going to discuss a business deal. Chapter 1109. Discuss business. Helene Vivian seemed to have thought of something. She slapped her forehead, and her long hair fell down. She looked very lazy and beautiful. Oh no, the people from Ju Wei Group begged me to let your father go to the company as little as possible. Qingchen was very calm. It's okay. I think father should be discussing business outside the company this time. Is that so? Helene Vivian looked at her youngest son and smiled softly, as if she knew everything. All right, no matter what business he's talking about, let's talk about your education first. Do you really not want to go to kindergarten? Speaking of this, Qingchen was still a little troubled. Originally, I planned to go to school slowly, but I calculated that if that's the case, I still have 13 years before I can come out to earn money. Now that there are so many people around brother who have designs on him, it's time to use money. Moreover, mother, you're pregnant, so I have to earn money first. You know, it's not easy to support a family. Helene Vivian. You're just a 4-year-old child, why are your thoughts so complicated? People who don't know will think that our family is very poor. The main thing is that Uncle Monkey said that if you want to make the other party go bankrupt, you have to be richer than the other party. Qingchen looked serious. So I decided not to go to kindergarten. I'll take Uncle Monkey and the others to earn money. Mother, you take care of the baby at home and don't talk to strangers. For example, the 2 fake police uncles who came to the house today. You can't come into contact with them. You have to listen to father. Helene Vivian, you're speaking like an adult. Who's the parent? Also, you can't think of making the other party go bankrupt. What kind of joke is this? Qingchen sighed again. I can only accompany you for a while. I still have to look for brother tonight. If anyone dares to let him drink, I'll buy their company. Helene Vivian was speechless. No one will let a 4-year-old child drink. Son, you're thinking too much. It's always like this in TV dramas. Those popular idols all have to entertain them. Big brother is so handsome, it's very dangerous. Qingchen's eyes widened, as if saying, isn't that right? Helene Vivian pulled her son into her arms. Come, let's talk about the idol drama you watched. Look at this too. Domineering CEO. Helene Vivian nodded. That's right, but when was there a child drinking? It's different in the entertainment industry. What if I run into you? Helene Vivian paused. Her son's tone was so self-righteous that she had nothing to say. All right, if you want to buy it, then buy it. Why was it that she couldn't even win over her son now? Little Qingchen touched Helene Vivian's face again. Beauty Vivian, don't be discouraged. Father and I won't despise you for being stupid. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the advanced mathematics questions. Father said that this is the only way to average the IQ of the family. Helene Vivian was speechless. Beligaju had just entered the villa when he heard this conversation. He reached out his slender fingers and grabbed the back of Qingchen's collar. Don't call your mother stupid in the future, understand? But father often talks to mother like this too. Qingchen was small to begin with, so when he was picked up, he looked like a kitten with all 4 legs in the air. Beligaju glanced at his son indifferently, his voice as cold as ever. She's my wife. Only I can bully my wife. Helene Vivian was speechless. Another day passed and little Qingchen brought a few burly men to the filming location. In his words, there had to be someone who could stand up for his big brother. Thus, every actor who wanted to join the set turned pale with fright when they saw the 1.9-meter-tall old A. Where did this triad boss come from? Where were the security guards? The security guards couldn't do anything. With 6 people standing there, it was really stressful. Young Nell was asked 3 times by the director if he wanted to be an actor. He even offered conditions that would definitely make him popular. This child was too outstanding. That mysterious feeling, that murderous and cold gaze, it couldn't be better. Elle only glanced at him before he was hugged by the bear-like old calm down, don't do anything. Little boss is looking at you. Only then did the young man stop. He stood aside with a cold expression, no longer paying attention to anyone. Olde wiped the sweat on his forehead. He's really a lethal weapon. Unfortunately, in the eyes of others, the powerful one wasn't Elle, but Olde. The people in the set increasingly felt that he was the head of the report fee collection, and they unanimously believed that Elle was forced by him. After Olde heard these rumors, he almost vomited blood. One had to know that compared to Elle, his treatment of the enemy was simply a gentle caress. This group of people didn't know what was good for them. Later, everyone knew what was good for them. The reason was that a second male lead in the set didn't like Bailey Shangxia. To think that a dignified lead like him couldn't even compare to a small supporting role. Wasn't he just a little better looking and had a little money from his family? His family still had money. This show was originally invested in by his father. This brat even brought his little brother to film. Did he think that this was a kindergarten? The second male lead was unhappy, so he simply expressed it in the show. The wine glass that he didn't need to throw was thrown at Bailey Shangxia. Bailey Shangxia didn't move. He was clearly a child, but his eyes were as cold as ice-black gems. The second male lead couldn't stand that look. Seeing that the wine glass was about to hit Bailey Shangxia's forehead, the second male lead's lips were about to curl into a smile. Then, there was a bang. The wine glass that was supposed to be thrown at Bailey Shangxia was kicked back by Elle, and it hit his face in an instant. The second male lead's face froze. Just as he was about to curse. Elle had already grabbed his collar and unceremoniously punched him. That sound was painful to hear. The young man's punch was very beautiful, but it was extremely ruthless. If Olde hadn't hugged his waist again, the second male lead would definitely have died. I'm going to sue you. The second male lead covered his missing front tooth. Bailey Shangxia, you actually dared to let your bodyguard hit me. Just you wait. Bailey Shangxia's small face was still cold. He raised an eyebrow at him and wiped his hand with a handkerchief. Stupid. Qingchen crouched at the side, her two small hands supporting her cheeks as she watched this scene. She turned her head and asked the rough men behind her, who is the person bullying Big Brother? The investor's youngest son. This child usually likes to suppress newcomers and always uses his family's connections to flirt with those female celebrities. The others in the set are angry but don't dare to say anything, afraid of offending him. Monkey opened a small notebook that recorded the information of all the crew members. Chapter 11:10. Upon hearing this, Qingchen tilted her head and said, if that's the case. Uncle Monkey, go and tell the director that we'll increase our investment and get him to remove this person. Since Little Boss had spoken, the rough men were naturally full of energy. This second male lead was a scumbag to begin with. Previously, no one dared to expose him. Now that Qingchen was here, of course, they couldn't just let it go. At the start, the second male lead was still complaining about how he had been wronged on Weibo. It was fine that the child didn't know the rules, but she actually asked his bodyguard to beat him up. As he spoke, he posted a photo of himself being beaten up on the internet. His words were directed at Bailey Shangxia. This was his plan. First, he would tarnish Bailey Shangxia's reputation on Weibo. Then, he would ask the director to remove that kid's part. After doing all this, he even called a reporter he knew. He was waiting to see Bailey Shangxia get scolded. However, he neglected one thing. There was a type of person in this world called hackers. Less than 10 minutes after the second male lead posted on Weibo, another Weibo post appeared on the internet. It was all about the dirty things he had done on set. One thing was stacked on top of another, and his arguments were well-founded. When the second male lead turned on his phone, his expression changed. He said that whoever dared to fabricate such lies to hurt him would be held responsible. In the end, less than a minute later, Monkey posted a few more photos. The photos were very obvious. The second male lead was drinking with an actress. His perverted hand even touched her chest. When these photos appeared, the second male lead was completely flustered. He started to contact his manager. However, it was already too late. Including what had happened on set, it was also posted on the internet. To be honest, in the industry, it was not a big deal for a veteran to bully a newcomer. However, he didn't even let a child off. This was a bit of a scumbag. Moreover, it was obvious that he wanted to hit Bailey Shangxia. There was no such thing as acting without practice. The director had already called for cut, but he still threw it. His expression was ferocious and full of jealousy. Previously, he had mocked Bailey Shangxia and his words were also found. When the netizens saw that the little CEO was being bullied, they were instantly furious. For a moment, many people in the industry were reposting it. After all, he was the nation's older brother. Although Bailey Shangxia was young, many female celebrities in the industry liked him because he usually didn't say a word and only knew how to take care of his younger brother. Many big shots were saying, no matter what, we can't have thoughts of harming children. Just like that, the second male lead became an actor that everyone despised. Even half of the commercials that he had previously negotiated were withdrawn. You're asking for a reason. The wives of advertisers were all fans of the nation's brother. That was how willful he was. Qin didn't expect her brother to be so popular. He hadn't even started to attack, but all the cute sisters and aunties were already on their side. She even told her brother to focus on filming and take care of him. Qin was still eating when she saw the post on Weibo. Bailey Shangxia must have fed her. After thinking for a while, he took a photo and posted it. Big brother takes good care of me. He gave me all the shrimp dumplings. I'm so full now. I'm rubbing my tummy. A white bear t-shirt and soft little hands. When the netizens saw the post, they knew that the person who posted it was Qin. Their faces were full of cuteness. The little CEO only posted one word on Weibo. Ha, that's right, it was a ha. Although it was only one word, the little CEO could often express a cold tone. As expected of her older brother, he was always cool. His style was completely different. He was shown off by the two little people again. The second male lead was still struggling, but before he could recover, the production team informed him that he didn't have to go anymore. Are you kidding me? Get the director, that old guy, to talk to me. Do you know who I am? Without my father's investment, do you think you can film anything? It was also an investment, but Qin was more sensible than him. When she saw the director's assistants, she would greet them politely. However, this person really didn't know how to respect others at all. After that, the director's assistant asked Qin, was the investment decision made by CEO Zhu? She didn't expect that such a cold person like CEO Zhu would be so good to her son. No. Qin was getting water for Bailey Shangxia at that time. It was my decision. I can't let anyone bully Big Brother. I don't like to use my hands, so I just use money. The director's assistant, what did you use money for previously? Our family's upbringing is like this. Qin was very serious. When Beauty Wei Wei chased Daddy, she also used money. It was said that 20 taels of silver for a kiss was enough to get Daddy. Sister, as a girl, you have to work hard to earn money. Only then can you sleep with the person you want to sleep with. The director's assistant. It sounded so reasonable. Why couldn't she refute it? However, she didn't expect the legendary Mrs. CEO to be so fierce. She was really amazing. The next day, Chinchin's words were published in the newspaper. Helene Vivian looked at the words and the corner of her mouth twitched. When did I teach my son this? Didn't you buy my kiss for 20 taels of silver? Beligaju put down the book in his hand and asked casually. Helene Vivian recalled what happened back then and lightly coughed twice. At that time, I didn't know you were the third prince. If I had known, I would have definitely given you more money. Didn't you see that I bought a lot of roses to chase after you later? Also, I gave you that armament. Although you don't need it, it's all money. Yes. Beligaju's lips curled up. He put her hand to his lips and kissed it. Whatever you say is right, my respected Han. Helene Vivian felt that although she was the master on the surface, a certain highness's perfunctory tone was too obvious. It was as if he was mocking her intelligence. In the end, after thinking about it, she decided to use her kissing skills to conquer a certain someone. In the end, just as her lips touched his, the man took the initiative and hugged her waist. First, he gently bit her lower lip. Then, he slowly made her unable to resist, until the minty fragrance completely permeated her breath. Someone once said that watching Beligaju kiss Helene Vivian, one would understand the meaning of deep affection. The way he tried his best to suppress the depth in his eyes and softened his grip. The side of his face as he slowly kissed her was so handsome that it was intoxicating. After the kiss, Helene Vivian didn't even have the strength to resist. She was gently held in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed the corner of her mouth. At that moment, the surroundings were so quiet that only the sound of her heartbeat could be heard. Chapter 11:11. Again and again. Helene Vivian felt that all the blood in her body seemed to be made of honey, sticky, soft, and hot. She couldn't help but bury half of her face in the man's arms, reaching out and hugging Beligaju's waist. From the beginning to the end, Beligaju just quietly hugged her, his slender fingers stroking her hair, and the corners of his mouth were obviously doting. After that, there was no difference from before. When the two of them were together, time always passed very quickly. After 4 months, Helene Wei's stomach finally started to show signs of protrusion. The old monk appeared again and gave Helene Vivian another relic. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. Since it's the place where my child will live in the future, I want to go and take a look. Amitba. The old monk smiled gently, of course. She didn't know if it was because Sakya had returned and the true Buddha had become one. Recently, Buddhism really had a little bit of tolerance of great enlightenment. The place where the old monk lived was not a no-man's land. In fact, it was on a hillside in Hebei. When they walked in, they could see the villagers planting trees at the foot of the mountain. They seemed to rarely see people coming. They all stopped what they were doing and looked at Beligaju and the others. It was a very simple place, and could even be said to be a little backward. This could be seen from the villagers' clothes. But it was because this place was backward that there were not so many disturbances. The smiles on the villagers' faces were natural, and even their restraint was real. It had to be said that this place was indeed suitable for children with Buddhism to live. It was just that this mountain was full of trees and hid the Qingxi tomb. It was not easy to enter. Even if someone entered, it would depend on whether they were fated to find the temple. The people who lived in the temple were very special. Helene Vivian could see the remnants of evil in each of them at a glance. They are all criminals who were once wanted. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and asked the old monk. The old monk recited a Buddhist sutra. There are only monks in the temple, there are no criminals. I've even dealt with one of them before. The police tried many methods but failed to catch him. You're telling me that you only have monks here? Hellion Vivian chuckled. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this. Didn't you say that you would take me to see who will raise my baby after he turns 4? Where is he? The old monk smiled as he held the prayer beads in his hand. Wisdom King is the one who understands the situation well. I have 3 candidates here and they are all on the mountain now. Oh. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Aren't you holding a tablet in your hand? Don't you have a picture? The old monk paused for a moment before he sighed and said, the fated ones still have to be chosen by the wise king. Why does it feel like a blind date? Hellion Vivian muttered. Beligaju pulled her over and laughed, you're talking nonsense again. When the monks in the temple saw Beligaju walking over from afar, they all stopped what they were doing. They always had an illusion that although this man looked elegant and indifferent, under that perfect disguise, there was a familiar smell. With just one look, they could confirm that this man's sins were probably more than all of them combined. These 3 are all my disciples. The old monk brought Hellion Vivian to the backyard and let her look at the people who did not belong to the temple. They don't have any sins. It's just that every year, there will be secular disciples sent to the mountain to cultivate. The wise king feels comfortable handing the children over to whoever he feels is safe. When the time comes, I will inform that person to pick them up. Hellion Vivian looked over and raised her eyebrows. That boy. He seems to be only 4 years old. The old monk paused for a moment. He did not expect Hellion Vivian to ask about his youngest and most troublesome disciple. He's about the same age as my 2 sons. Hellion Vivian looked at the tall and straight little figure. He was obviously more than 10 years younger than the other 2, but there was a faint sense of calmness that could not be ignored. I choose him. The old monk was stunned, then he smiled and said, since the wise king chose him, then it's fate. This child has never cared about anyone since he was young. It's probably related to his family. Even I can't figure out what he's thinking. Oh. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and wanted to ask if they should change to another person. She saw the boy walking towards them. His eyes fell on her slightly protruding stomach. Auntie, are you pregnant? Hellion Wei looked at the little boy's posture, which was straighter than most people, and her lips curved into a smile. The boy looked like he came from a good family. He was very polite. Can I touch Auntie's stomach? Beligaju raised his thick eyebrows when he heard this. Hellion Vivian smiled. Sure. The boy looked expressionless, but his beautiful eyes lit up. He reached out his small hand and carefully stroked Hellion Vivian's stomach. It's not moving. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Could it be that everything in the book was a lie? That was unlikely. After all, that was what high school students learned. His grandfather had said that everything in the book was basically correct. To be honest, it was really boring in the temple. However, there was no difference where he stayed. However, this baby didn't even move. How stupid was it? As soon as he thought this, he felt a pulse in his palm. It was very weak, but it was real. The boy smiled. Auntie, your baby is very healthy. Hellion Vivian looked at the boy's bright eyes and suddenly smiled. It's him. She made the final decision. Hellion Vivian never thought that her prediction would come true. After returning from the temple, she asked Monkey to find out all the information about the boy. The boy was human. There was no such thing as reincarnation. However, he was extraordinarily intelligent. He was a true 3rd generation of the Red family. Strictly speaking, he was young Master Tang's youngest nephew. His grandfather was one of the founders of the country. His grandfather was in power. Unfortunately, the child lost his parents when he was young. It was also because of this reason that the old man sent him to the mountain. He wanted this golden grandson to be safe and sound for the rest of his life. After reading the information, Helly and Vivian felt that the boy was very suitable. The older generation doted on their children. Even if the baby passed away in the future, he wouldn't grow up bad. More importantly, the boy's family were all soldiers. In Huaxia, the blood of real soldiers flowed with innate integrity. Helly and Vivian was very relieved to leave it to this family. However, there was one thing that she didn't expect at all. It happened more than 10 days later. Chapter 11-12. Early in the morning, under the faint light of the sun. The top manager had pushed away Bailey Shangxia's work early and would not arrange any schedule for him before the afternoon. The little CEO had said that he would accompany the CEO's wife for a pregnancy checkup. After hearing this news, the senior executives of the Zhu Wei Group, who were about to submit the report, all heaved a sigh of relief. The CEO's wife wanted a pregnancy checkup, which meant that the boss would not appear at the company's regular meeting on Monday. What a beautiful day! Helly and Vivian was also in a good mood. After all, this pregnancy was different from the previous ones. The baby was very obedient and there had never been any abnormalities. Except for the situation where the goldfish wanted to jump through the dragon's gate, everything was normal. The two little ones had never been to the pregnancy checkup room before, but with their high IQ, they knew what the procedure was as soon as they walked into the hospital. Helly and Vivian was half lying on the white bed. On the other side, two specialists were standing next to her, adjusting the equipment. Qingshan was worried that the baby would be nervous, so he stood by the bed and touched Helly and Vivian's stomach. Baby, be good. Do the checkup properly. When you come out, Big Brother will take you to eat ice cream. Speaking of this, little Qingshan was especially proud. In the future, he would be someone who could be an elder brother. When the baby came out in the future, he would also wash the baby's hair and take care of him like a big brother. Bailey Shangxia stood on the other side of the bed and said with a cool expression, "If you really can't stand others touching you, you can burn the equipment. When I was with your little brother in the past, we often scared the imperial doctors so much that they didn't dare to check the Empress's pulse. This is normal." Helly and Vivian. How is this normal? Bailey Shangxia saw that the baby did not respond and continued to encourage him. You don't have to worry about the consequences. Even if something happens, those stupid humans will definitely think that there is a problem with the equipment and it has nothing to do with you. Helly and Vivian did not know whether to laugh or cry. She always had the illusion that the baby had been raised astray before he was born. Beligaju also heard his eldest son's words at this time. He picked him up with an indifferent expression and casually threw him aside. The specialists who walked in were dumbfounded. Do what you have to do. With just a few words from Beligaju, the two experts immediately busied themselves, fearing that they would make any mistakes during the inspection. They even inquired about Helly and Vivian's usual eating habits. Finally, they had to do an ultrasound. This was a part of every pregnant woman's life. Bailey Shangxia was holding Qingshan's hand at the side. The two little mushrooms stared at Helly and Vivian as she was pushed in. After all, an expert was an expert. She could look at an ultrasound for a long time, so Helly and Vivian really thought that this baby would be like the two troublesome little guys and cause the hospital to directly cut off the power. Reality proved that this baby was indeed very obedient. She's full of vitality. She's healthier than most babies. You can tell from her tiny arms. As the specialist spoke, he smiled and pointed at the screen of the instrument. Madam, look, this is the fetus in your stomach. Not only Helly and Wei Wei, but even the two little ones had their eyes fixed on the grayish-white picture. A small head slightly bigger than a fist was curled up together with a small body. Baby. Qingshan was really happy. Her big eyes were fixed on the instrument, and she looked extremely happy. Why isn't it moving? As the older brother, Bailey Shangsha frowned. He always felt that the baby was even weaker than his younger brother at that time. Should he give it some demonic energy? Or should he go and catch 2 ghost messengers for it to play with? On this side, the little prince of the demon world was seriously considering. On the other side, a certain highness had already seen through his thoughts. He picked him up and threw him aside. The specialist smiled and said, "It's not time for her to eat yet. She's sleeping. She'll wake up at noon. The fetus is like a baby. In the future, little CEO, you have to talk to the baby more. In that case, she'll respond to you." Qingchen had been doing this all along. Her little head nodded vigorously, and then she said, "I'll ask my brother to talk to the baby with me." Hearing this, the 2 specialists smiled at each other. No wonder the people on the internet liked this pair of brothers so much. No one would dislike such children. Just like that, Hellion Vivian finished her examination. Originally, there were no major problems during the entire process. Until when she was about to leave, one of the specialists smiled and said, "Madam, CEO is really lucky. You have 2 young masters, and now you have a little daughter. In the future, you will definitely be more and more considerate." Wait a minute. Daughter? Hellion Vivian's fingers paused. Are you saying that I'm pregnant with a girl? The specialist looked at Hellion Vivian's reaction and thought that he had said something that he shouldn't have said. He was still hesitating on how to answer. After all, a rich family like this favored boys over girls. He had seen many mothers-in-law follow them around. They took good care of their daughters-in-law, but when they saw that the child was a girl, they immediately ignored her and left her daughters-in-law on the hospital bed. They would rather spend their time playing cards than look at their granddaughter. Of course, there were also those who liked both boys and girls. He just didn't know which type of mother CEO Ju was. Thinking of this, the specialist secretly glanced at Beligaju. Beligaju's handsome side profile also froze for a moment. A girl? This was something that Beligaju didn't expect. He had always been indifferent to children. This was the nature of a demon. Therefore, he didn't deliberately think about whether the baby in Weiwei's stomach was a boy or a girl. However, if it was a girl, it should be very similar to her. No wonder it was so obedient. Beligaju smiled and stroked Hellion Vivian's hair with his fingers. Isn't it good to have a daughter? The key is to send her to the temple to be a monk. Hellion Vivian wanted to cry but had no tears. She said to Beligaju in grief, "When the baby grows up, she will definitely ask me why I want a girl to be a monk." Bailey Jiaju imagined that scene, and the smile on the corner of his mouth deepened. Hellion Vivian felt that his highness was gloating, so she opened her mouth and bid him. However, his highness had always been open-minded. Little Seven has been a monk since he was young. I don't see anything wrong with him. Little Seven is a boy, and our daughter is a girl. Hellion Vivian shook her head. Oh no, my mind is now full of those little monks who stayed in Mountain Tenya. All of them were bald. Our daughter will also be like that. Listening to the conversation between the 2 of them, the specialist was stunned again. Become a monk. Why? Could it be that the upper-class society now favored boys and made girls shave their heads and become monks? How scary. Chapter 11-13. Hellion Vivian also felt a little sorry for the baby in her belly. However, as the old monk said, the newly born disciple of Buddha couldn't stand the invasion of any demonic aura at all. Moreover, such a child would only be carefree if she lived by the side of Buddha. The smell emitted from her body was the existence that attracted the dark things. If she wanted the baby to grow up safely, the only love Hellion Vivian could give her was to send her away no matter how reluctant she was. Hellion Vivian could feel that from the moment she came out of the hospital, His Highness had been suppressing the demonic nature in his body, fearing that she would feel uncomfortable. The two little ones were becoming more and more like older brothers, following each other up and down the stairs. Hellion Vivian thought about it and decided to tell the two little guys why she wanted to send her sister away. After Bailey Shangxie heard it, his cool little face became more silent. Hellion Wei Wei kissed him and explained patiently, when she's 12 years old, we'll be able to bring our younger sister back. We can also visit her from time to time. We're separated now so that we can be together forever as a family. Is it because of me that my sister can't stay? Bailey Shangxia's voice was very low. Hellion Vivian felt distressed when she heard it. Of course not. There are many reasons. A noisy city like this is not suitable for my sister. Demonic aura will damage Buddha's fate. Bailey Shangxia's face didn't show any joy or anger, but his eyes dimmed. I can go back to the demon world. Hearing this, Qingchen immediately raised her little head and grabbed Bailey Shangxia's sleeve. It was obvious that she didn't want Bailey Shangxia to leave. For the first time, Hellion Vivian felt that something was not handled well. She looked at His Highness for help. Baligaju put down the business tablet in his hand and said in a lukewarm voice, if demonic aura will damage Buddha's fate, the demonic aura in my body is the strongest. It's not your turn to leave. Bailey Shangxia heard it and felt that it was right. His father was much more dangerous than him. But I won't leave. Baligaju continued, his deep eyes meeting his. You should know that other than your mother, I won't consider anything else. Your sister going to the temple has nothing to do with you. Even if it does, it's related to me. As a demon, you have a lifespan of thousands of years. Don't learn from humans about puberty. Of course, Bailey Shangxia knew who was the most important person to his imperial father. When he was very young, he had seen his father almost destroy the world for his mother. It could be said that demons were born this way. No matter how perfect their disguise was, they were still selfish in their bones. Since imperial father and imperial mother were together, they would have to send imperial sister away. But when he thought about it carefully, even if his father was not here, according to his mother, a child with Buddha fate was not suitable to stay in the mortal world. But no matter what, the knot in Bailey Shangxia's heart was finally untied. The child only had one thought. No matter how bad he was, it shouldn't be a problem for him to stay by his mother, brother, and sister's side. If the situation that the exorcist said happened, he would immediately leave for the demon world. He would definitely not hurt his family. Days passed by. Time was like flowing water. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop it. The bigger Hellion Vivian's stomach, the more severe the reaction. After vomiting, she always wanted to drink water. Her face was very pale. Baligaju knew that she didn't rest well, so he patiently patted her back and said these words to her in a low voice. Although it was a poisonous tongue that crushed her intelligence, it was very useful. This way, Hellion Vivian could fall asleep. For a few days, Bailey Shangxia hid very far away from Hellion Vivian. He was afraid that the demonic energy on his body would make his mother feel uncomfortable. But when he turned around, Hellion Vivian kissed him and patted his head, asking him to take care of Qingchen. Bailey Shangxia knew at that time that the exorcists didn't make any sense. Because they weren't his mother and brother, because some emotions could only be expressed to people who understood. After that, Bailey Shangxia bought a house in the capital. The golden agent did all the paperwork. After all, he was still a minor in the human world. This made him a little depressed. In the past, he always wanted to run away from home with his mother and brother. Now that he had a sister, of course, he couldn't be as careless as before. Even if he wanted to run away from home, he had to have a place to stay. After hearing the reason for buying a house, the golden agent was petrified. He was seriously considering running away from home. It wasn't careless at all. But this idea has been in your mind for so long. Are you really not afraid that CEO Ju will beat you to death? Bailey Shangxia never cared about these details. On the screen, he was an innate vampire aristocrat. Off the screen, he was the nation's older brother. He had everything planned out. Compared to these things, Qingchen was the most considerate. Knowing that his sister was going to be sent away, he bought a lot of small things for her. Most of them were for feeding her milk. Among them, there was a milk bottle that Qingchen and Bailey Shangxia drew together. It was so that when his sister was born in the future, she could take these things with her. There were also other small things that he wanted to give to his sister when he was going to see her. Even if he was reluctant to leave, he couldn't hide the layers of joy in his heart. Of course, the two children didn't expect that the so-called milk bottle was not necessary for a certain baby. On the day Hellion Vivian gave birth, the light of Buddha shone on the world. However, the people who were in a hurry didn't know. The baby was bright and white. Her skin was so good that the medical staff at the side couldn't help but praise. She seemed to be very quiet. She put her thumb in her mouth. Compared to a normal baby, she was chubby and cute. There were no wrinkles on her face. Just like that, she was wrapped in a thin blanket with a tiger head. That small blanket was also jumped on by Bailey Shangxia and Hellion Qingchen. This way, the three of them would use the same series of tiger head shoes, tiger head pajamas, and tiger head thin blanket. Amitba. The old monk appeared outside the ward on time. He smiled slowly. Beligaju seemed to be waiting for him. His slender figure leaned against the wall. His voice was very calm. When the child grows up and asks, just say that I want to send her away. Don't mention anything about the fate of Buddha to her. The old monk was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, the Emperor's love for the Wisdom King is really deep. Whenever the Phoenix of Buddhism gave birth to a child of Buddha, she would be sent away. Not to mention in this chaotic secular world. It was impossible that the Emperor, who was born from chaos, didn't know this. He did this so that the child would not resent the Wisdom King when she grew up. Thus, he took all the responsibility on himself. Amitba. He didn't believe it before. Now, he did. The Emperor's love for the Phoenix had always been real. Chapter 11:14. Everyone knew that Zhu Wei Group had a new daughter. However, no one had ever seen her before. However, on the day she was born, Beligaju, who was dressed in a suit and had an elegant temperament, called the lawyer and shareholders and transferred all the shares to Hellion Vivian. 40% of the shares were owned by the little princess. Regarding this point, some people had even discussed it behind their backs. It was fine to say that when the little CEO grew up, he would definitely question the CEO Ju why he transferred most of the shares to his daughter. At that time, Bailey Shangxia was already famous. When he heard such rumors, his little face was cold. When my sister grows up, I can also share my money with her. Of course, girls have to be raised well. Yes, both my younger brother and sister have to be raised well. My father has done so many terrible things, but this is the only thing he did right. The reporters were speechless. This was really an unexpected reaction. However, because of this very simple sentence, Bailey Shangxia had captured a lot of aunties and fans. After all, even during an interview, when Qingchen ran in, he could spare time to feed the child water. He even pulled little Qingchen to prevent her brother from running outside, saying that the sun was too bright outside. Qingchen was even more likable. She blinked her big eyes at the reporters and asked if they were thirsty. After a while, she asked someone to deliver iced coffee. There were more than 100 cups, all for the staff. There were also a series of desserts such as New York cheese. Only then did people realize that the richest person in the entire Bailey family was the little young master. It was because he was too young that people always ignored him. Now that they thought about it, the little young master was very generous every time. The media looked at each other and immediately had the next day's headlines in their hearts. Without angering the little CEO, they dug up the little young master's background. Only then did they realize that he was a gangster. A gangster. And a little big boss with a legal firearms license. In other words, the other party was in the firearms business. God, this was completely not in line with the little young master's elegant and refined temperament, okay? However, there were always 4 people around him who collected protection fees. At first, the media thought that they were only slightly related to Hong Kong. Later on, they managed to dig up information about one of the big guys among the 4. He was a retired soldier from a special forces unit. Even in the international arena, he was very famous. His long-range attack ability was very strong. His codename was Old Jean. He wore sunglasses and had big golden teeth. Although he looked like a middle-aged man, he was a very handsome middle-aged man. It was said that both the Communist Party and the White Dao wanted to poach him. However, such a handsome uncle actually followed behind the little young master, holding a small school bag and a thermos bottle. Sometimes, he would even take out a small fan to fan the little young master. He wouldn't know if he didn't dig, but once he did, he was shocked. The media no longer dared to touch on the background of the others. The only thing they could be sure of was that it was not a big deal for Ju Wei Group to be given to the little princess. Because it was obvious that the little young master's background was very strong, so strong that it was blinding. When the employees of the Ju Wei Group saw this headline, they finally believed what Qingchen had once said. Their CEO Ju was indeed the one who was being kept. The president's wife was so rich. What should she do? Those who wanted to climb up the ranks finally realized this stark difference. Those who wanted to find various opportunities to get close to Beligaju were completely listless. In the past, they did not know about Hellion Vivian's background. Now that they knew, they did not dare to act rashly. They were afraid that they would be called for protection fees. In this regard, little Qingchen was very satisfied. A family without outsiders was the most perfect. Hence, the diplomatic work of the family was all handed over to Qingchen. However, the other burly men were very unhappy. Why did they only dig up Old Jin's information and not theirs? Monkey was very calm. From time to time, he would put on a mask and apply facial oil. Old Jean asked him with a cigarette in his mouth, "What are you doing? What if a reporter takes pictures of me?" Monkey was extremely excited. "Look at how mysterious I usually am when I appear. After you, the person they will notice will definitely be me. Let me tell you, I've already prepared my opening speech. I want to tell them how awesome a hacker I am. I broke through the defense network with young Master Tang before I was 20 years old. At 21 years old, he gave a series of self-introductions. He had the aura of a modern poet. But the reality was, I heard that you are only 18 years old this year. You looked so cool the last time. What did you do before? Were you also a sniper like Uncle Jean?" Monkey, who was still posing at the side, gradually shrank into a ball. "Why? Why am I not the one being interviewed?" "Because it's all about looks now," Old Jean said faintly. Monkey was very indignant when he heard this. He took out a mirror and looked at his face. Then, he looked at Elle, who was not far away. In the end, he smashed the mirror. After comparing himself, he could only realize that he was uglier. The family lived such a lively life. Some of their usual interactions would make people sigh at how such a special and beautiful family could exist. Except that the little princess was not by their side. However, everyone seemed to know that they were doing this to protect. Time passed noisily. 4 years later. The sky had just brightened, and a thin fog rose. A distant and dull bell sounded from the mountaintop. Halfway up the mountain, there was a very simple and unadorned temple. There was only one treasure enshrined in it. That was the Buddha, Mani Sakya. After the bells sounded in the temple, the scene suddenly came to life. Monks in monk robes hurried past the treasure. Soon, the temple was filled with monks. All of them sat cross-legged on a futon. Their gazes were calm, neither high nor low. At the front was an old monk. He held a scripture in his hand and silently recited Dharma. The deacon read the names of the monks loudly. Xian Jing. Disciple is here. Xian Kong. Xian Kong. Senior brother, martial nephew Xian Kong is here. A loud and tender voice sounded. A loud bang was heard. The door of the temple was kicked open, and a little monk walked in. He looked to be no more than 4 or 5 years old, and there were a few dots on his bald head. His white monk robes hung loosely on his body, and there was a big white steamed bun in his mouth. His lotus root-like arms were dragging a person. That person was Xian Kong, who was late. He, who had been dragged all the way, was about to cry. At this moment, little Baldy puffed up his round cheeks. He was very petite and cute. His 2 bright eyes were very serious. Don't cry. Don't offend woolly Buddha. Chapter 11:15. Although little Baldy was young, she was very devout to Buddha and would not allow others to be late for chanting. Furthermore, little Baldy never liked to argue with others. She only liked to use her hands. Seeing that the situation was chaotic, the deacon's head throbbed as he shouted, Xianaju. Senior brother, you're so loud, you'll disturb Buddha Wooly. Little Baldy looked at him disapprovingly. If you continue to shout, I'll beat you up. The deacon took a deep breath and told himself not to be angry. The other party was still a child, and she was only 4 years old. It was wrong to be impulsive, not to mention that he was a monk. How many times have I told you not to drag people into the temple? I didn't I drag him in? Dragging is more serious than dragging. Senior brother, you're already so old, don't worry about so many details. Buddha said that people with a small heart will have wrinkles. I'm old. I'm only 28 years old, a substitute professor at Tsinghua University. How am I old? Do you know what people outside call me, a rich husband? Do you know what a rich husband is, you little brat? Amitabha, don't be so irritable in front of Buddha. Fine, I won't be irritable. I'll ask you why you hit me again. Can't you have a good talk with Xian Kong? Why waste so much time on something that can be solved with a single punch? Little Baldy tilted her head and took a bite of the steamed bun in her hand. She tightened her pinkish face to show that she was serious. The deacon could not hold it in anymore and turned to the monks who were hugging him. Let go of me. I must teach this brat a lesson today. Master, it's not that we want to stop you, but you really can't beat martial ant. The monks raised their heads, their eyes full of sincerity. Did you forget the last time she kicked you into the water? You caught a cold for 5 days before you recovered. At that time, Master told us that if you're impulsive again, we must think of a way to stop you. If we can't stop you, you'll punish us by chanting scriptures in unison. Have you forgotten these words? Master. Master, you should calm down. The deacon was speechless. Everyone is still so energetic. Come, Aju, come to Master. The old monk was still smiling. Little Baldy walked over with his short and thick legs. He raised his hand and said, Amitba. The old monk stroked the little one's head and said, Today, I'm going to take you to meet someone. Joe, do you remember what I told you? When the time comes, I'll go down the mountain. Little Baldy pouted and said pitifully, But I don't want to go down the mountain. There's Master, steamed buns, and senior brothers to play with me. The ancient temple was isolated from the rest of the world. Very few people were born on the mountain. Little Baldy was the only one. It could be said that Little Baldy was brought up by these monks and had never come into contact with outsiders. The child was naturally reluctant to leave. However, there was one thing that was very difficult to understand, and that was that Little Baldy always thought that she was a boy. Furthermore, Little Baldy also felt that it was wrong for a boy to leave home. She was going to be a temple abbot in the future, so how could she casually leave the mountain? However, the truth was that Little Baldy was a pure girl. No one told her this, although she often received delicious food from her brothers and the little white cat that her parents gave her. However, Little Baldy's wish had always been to stay by Buddha's side and never leave. At the thought of leaving this place, Little Baldy couldn't help but reach out and grab her senior brother's trousers. The deacon also couldn't bear to part with his junior brother, but he knew that the master always had his reasons for doing things. In other words, in the entire temple, only the old monk knew that Little Baldy was a girl. The old monk didn't tell anyone about this. Everything was to protect Little Baldy. Now that Little Baldy's age had come, it wouldn't be suitable for her to stay in the temple anymore. After all, this wasn't Mountain Tenya. After all, there were differences between men and women. Joe, you forgot again. Buddha is everywhere. The old monk squatted down and looked at Little Baldy's face. As long as you have Buddha in your heart, you can go anywhere. Are you afraid of these experiences? Little Baldy raised her small fist and said firmly, Of course I'm not afraid. All experiences are the same as senior brothers, paper tigers. The deacon. Hey, if you want to talk, just talk. Why do you have to belittle me as well? The old monk gave him a comforting look, then said to Little Baldy, Come, Joe. Master will bring you down the mountain. That person is already waiting for you at the foot of the mountain. Little Baldy knew that she had no choice but to leave. She was carrying a monk's bag on her back. From time to time, she would turn her head to look at those monks who couldn't bear to part with her. The deacon held Little Baldy's hand. After we go down the mountain, if anyone dares to bully you, you can call this number. Senior brother, don't worry. I'm not as weak as you. No one will bully me. This sentence made all the sadness in the temple disappear. The deacon was pulled back by a group of people behind him, so he didn't fight with Little Baldy. Little Baldy thought for a while, then walked back. She took 4 big steamed buns from the room. She held one in each hand and put the other 2 in the pockets of her monk robes. Master, I've taken the rations. Let's go. As she spoke, Little Baldy handed her soft little hand to the old monk. The old monk held her hand and walked step by step to the mountainside that was surrounded by clouds. At the foot of the mountain, a pure black military Hummer was parked on the narrow road. The license plate number was different from other cars. It was white and red. It was a car from the military. We're here. Your fated person is there. The old monk lowered his eyes and looked at Little Baldy. Joe, remember Master's words. Even if you're not on the mountain, you have to do morning reading every day. There will be a day when your family will take you back. Little Baldy held the big steamed bun in her mouth and nodded obediently. Then, she said very seriously, But Master, I don't want to go back at all. I want to come back to the temple to be the abbot in the future. So, Master, you must live well. The old monk was speechless. Just like that, after little Baldy finished instructing her master, she carried her small bag and held the big steamed bun in her mouth. She wobbled towards the black Hummer with a little white cat on her bald head. With a bang, the car door opened. A 9-year-old boy walked out. He was wearing overalls and a small shirt. There was even a small bow tie around his neck. His facial features were very outstanding, and his temperament was different from the monks on the mountain. Little Bald Head was immediately stunned. Chapter 11:16. Bai Huai, why are you still standing here? Quickly go and bring little junior brother over. Look at the big bag he's carrying. The child is about to be crushed. The person who spoke was already quite old. He was wearing a military uniform, and the little bald head on his shoulder was a little dazzling. The old monk chanted Amitabha behind her. Why did General Bai come personally? Ajo likes to cause trouble every 2 to 3 days. I'll have to trouble you to take care of her in the future. Master, you're too serious. No matter how mischievous she is, she's still better than my grandson. He can't say a word for a long time. In my opinion, Aju's personality is just right. She can let that brat know what a child is. The old man's voice was very deep. As one of the founding fathers, he was most worried about his grandson. He was usually really busy and only stayed at home 1 day a month. The rest of the time, he had to run around outside. South Tibet had never been peaceful, so he had to guard it. However, these words could not be said to Bai Huai. Because every time he mentioned it, Bai Huai would calmly say to him, I know that grandfather is afraid that I will think too much, but I won't. As a general, you should be stationed at the defense line. To be more precise, Bai Huai was a child who never made people worry about him. As a grandfather, he did not even know how to care about his grandson. He had also tried to communicate with the people at school, and the answers he received were all excellent. Even when he went to school, Bai Huai was so smart that no one worried about him. But the more it was like this, the more worried the old man was. This was also the reason why he agreed when he heard the abbot say that he wanted Bai Huai to adopt a child. If there was one more person by his grandson's side, it should be better. In the future, when he had a brother, Bai Huai should also be more popular. However, old Master Bai was wrong about one thing, and that was that Aju was not a little junior brother. Of course, all of this was in the future. Now was the time. Little Baldy held a steamed bun in her mouth and stared at Bai Juan with her round eyes. She chanted, Amitabha. Only then did Bai Huai look over. He actually did not like children. Until now, he still did not like children. However, since he was going to adopt, he naturally had to show his attitude. Get in the car. These 3 words were very light, but they were like those of a little adult. Little Baldy nodded and stretched out her soft little hand, which meant that she wanted Bai Huai to hold her. Bai Huai's eyes slid past little Baldy's soft hands and landed on those big round eyes. He paused for a moment before holding little Baldy's hand. Her hand was much smaller than his, and it was very soft in his hand. Bai Huai thought that perhaps children were not all that troublesome. At the very least, his little junior brother looked very obedient. When the old man saw this scene, the smile on his face deepened. This is indeed different. Really? Aju is a lucky star. The old monk smiled and said, the general is also a blessed person. As for Bai Huai, he is full of righteousness, and even 100 ghosts will not invade. So the general can relax and let nature take its course. Hearing this, the old man was naturally happy. The Bai family had a special chauffeur driving in front, and the old man sat in the passenger seat. The 2 children sat in the back, one big and one small. Little Baldy still had the white cat on her head, and her big eyes seemed to be looking at everything strangely. After a while, she was hungry. She took out a steamed bun from her pocket, frowned, and thought for a while. In the end, she decided to share half of it with Bai Huai. "Little brother, I brought dry food. The steamed buns in the temple are very delicious." Ah, as she said this, little Baldy took a bite of her half of the steamed bun and ate it very happily. Bai Huai looked at the little person's eyes, which were as round as a cat's, and heard her call him little brother. For a moment, he could not refuse her enthusiasm. When the chauffeur saw this, he smiled and said, "Master, little master seems to be getting along very well with the new child." Yes. Old Master Bai was getting happier and happier. When little Baldy heard the words new child, she knew that they were talking about her. Her pink cheeks were still stuffed with steamed buns. She said very seriously, "Master told me that I have to be obedient when I go down the mountain. If I don't listen, Buddha won't want me anymore. Moreover, if I don't listen, I will meet women. I heard from my martial nephews that the women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. If I meet them, I will be unlucky." These words were said by a 4-year-old child. It was really funny. Old Master Bai laughed on the spot, and the chauffeur also couldn't help but laugh. Seeing them like this, little Baldy thought that they didn't believe him, so he continued with a serious face, "It's true. Monks don't lie. If it was a woman who came to adopt me, I wouldn't have appeared. Fortunately, the person who came was little brother. Amitabha Buddha, I'm good at fighting. Old grandpa and uncle, don't laugh. Ha ha ha." Hearing this, old Master Bai laughed even more recklessly. "Little Aju, you are really a happy person." Little Baldy didn't understand. What she said was based on her experience of living for 4 years. Why were the old grandpa and uncle smiling so happily? Even the corners of the little brother's mouth were slightly raised. Although it wasn't very obvious, she still saw it. Sigh, as a monk, after going down the mountain, she really couldn't communicate with people. Little Baldy heaved a sigh of relief. Bai Jun turned his head to look at the steamed bun residue at the corner of the little girl's mouth. He naturally took out a handkerchief and wiped it for her. "You're right. I don't like women either." Little Baldy felt that she had finally met a confidant. She smiled very sweetly at Bai Jun and then continued to lower her head to eat her big steamed bun. It was a child's nature to sleep after eating. In addition, there was really a master in the Hummer. Not long after, little Baldy fell asleep. She even dreamed that her master was teaching her boxing and that he was going to destroy her senior brother. To be honest, why was he so irritable? She would come back one day. It was really not good for her senior brother to think of her that way. In fact, the temple was setting off firecrackers all day long. When the child fell asleep, she also had a pink steamed bun face. She held her own package in her hands. The white cat on her head opened its eyes as if it was guarding little Baldy. It felt more spiritual than ordinary cats. Bai Jun looked at little Baldy's posture, and the rejection in his heart lessened a little. Perhaps the other party was even more uneasy than him. After all, they were in a new place, and they would have to live with their new family in the future. Moreover, the little girl was only 4 years old. That little arm in his hand seemed to be able to break with a snap. Shouldn't he be nicer to the child? Bai Jun, who was only 9 years old, fell into serious contemplation. Chapter 11:17. The Bai family was located in the military compound. In the quiet Chang'an street, all vehicles had to be checked before entering and leaving. Ordinary people of this generation could not enter at all. There were specialized armed soldiers standing guard. The building was not very tall, but the greenery was very good. There was even a model of a fighter jet parked on the lawn of the courtyard. Little Baldy's eyes were big as he leaned against the car window. Together with the little white cat on his head, he was sizing up the new home that he was about to enter. His pink little face was filled with all kinds of expressions. This place was obviously different from the mountain. There were no apprentice nephews in monk robes, nor were there any apple trees to sit on. The main reason was that she couldn't even smell the smell of steamed buns. Could it be that the people at the foot of the mountain did not eat lunch? Little Baldy frowned in confusion. He touched his little belly with his little hand and glanced in Baijuan's direction. Baijuan was reading an English book. Little Baldy felt that it wasn't good to disturb her brother. After all, she had always settled things like eating by herself. Back in the temple, when there was not enough food to eat, she would snatch food from her martial nephews. It should be the same after descending the mountain. She had just seen someone leave with a lunch box. She was going to have a talk with that person in a while. He clenched his fist. Little Aju, come down. This is the place where you live with your little brother. Isn't it beautiful? Old Master Bai had always been close to children, so he personally opened the car door. When little Baldy saw that the car door had opened, she stretched out her short legs and was about to jump down. Unfortunately, she was not tall enough, so she wanted to turn around and slide down. However, Baijuan held her hand and said, "Get down slowly. This car has a high floor." Yes. For little Baldy, who was less than a meter tall, the military Hummer was indeed a little tall. She had stretched out her short legs for a long time, but they did not touch the ground. Little brothers were the best. Baijuan did not feel anything wrong with leading little Baldy. The other party was too small. Even when he walked, he was a little shaky, like a round roly-poly toy. Since he was adopted, of course, he had to lead him. Old Master Bai stood at the side. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. It had only been a day, but his grandson had already gained some popularity. As expected, he should have brought Aju home a long time ago. "Chief, there seems to be a problem in the south. We need you to go there." The adjutant in military uniform walked over and whispered to Old Master Bai. Old Master Bai had just returned and was about to leave again. He subconsciously glanced at his grandson. Baijuan's handsome and noble little face did not change in the slightest. It was as if he had already expected this result. "Grandpa, you can go if you have something to do. I'll stay here." Hearing his grandson's indifferent voice, Old Master Bai pulled little Baldy to the side and said, "Little Aju, can you accompany Brother Baijuan on grandfather's behalf?" "Sure." Little Baldy's big eyes flickered. "Ba." Buddha Wooly said that we must learn to save all living beings. "Grandfather, go save others. I'll stay and save Brother Baijuan." "Grandfather, don't worry. I'll snatch food for Brother Baijuan. I won't starve Brother Baijuan." Old Master Bai, stealing food. He must have heard wrongly. The cute little Ajuk shouldn't be able to say such violent words. They didn't have much time. Once they received a mission, they had to set off. This was the duty of a soldier. In fact, Baijuan was already used to it. When Old Master Bai left, he just stood there quietly and watched him leave. Thus, only the two children were left at home. Of course, there were also the driver, the auntie, and the soldiers standing outside the door. There was no need to worry about the safety of the military compound at all. Little Baldy followed Baijuan into the two-story building in front of her. Her big round eyes looked back and forth. She could not hold it in any longer. Why couldn't she smell the steamed buns? If there was no food at home, she could still run out and snatch it now. The uncle with the lunchbox should not have gone far. The child was hungry. She reached out and tugged at Baijuan's sleeve. Little brother, it's noon now. Shouldn't we eat? Master said that if we don't eat on time, we won't grow. Baijuan had yet to speak. The driver beside him was shocked. Didn't little Aju eat 2 big steamed buns just now? That's dry food. Little Baldy seriously played with her little fingers and explained, it was a snack on the road. Now that we're home, of course we have to eat a proper lunch. Otherwise, Buddha will blame us. The driver's mouth twitched when he heard this. This was the first time he had seen a child treat a big steamed bun as a snack. Also, what the hell was being blamed by Buddha? Uncle Lu, go and ask Auntie Wang to prepare some vegetarian food and bring it to the 2nd floor. Baijuan reached out and touched little Baldy's head. Aju, come upstairs with me to wash your hands first. Little Baldy was also obedient. She knew that she had to wash her hands before eating. She just let Baijuan hold her hand and lifted her short legs with great effort. She walked up the stairs step by step. She was especially happy that there was something to eat. Baijuan lowered his head and looked at the little person he was leading. When he saw that her eyes were sparkling, his mood also became much better. After walking into the bathroom, little Baldy still had the little white cat on her head. The cat's tail swayed back and forth at the back of her head. Little Baldy had never seen such a beautiful sink. There was even a big lotus flower printed on it. The pure white tiles were cold and smooth to the touch. It was completely different from the small iron wash basin she used to wash her hands in the temple. At this point, it had to be mentioned that no matter how much incense money the temple received, the living conditions were always simple. It was completely the same facilities that were used after liberation. Even drinking water had to be done by pressing the well. Little Baldy's favorite thing to do every day was to press the well and carry water. Now that there was no need for the child to carry water, the child was really not used to it. She stared blankly at the beautiful sink and tiptoed to bury her little chubby face in it. She looked left and right, and accidentally, little Baldy's little foot left the ground and fell into the sink. Oh, oh. When Baijuan heard the sound and came in, he saw little Baldy only left with her little claws lying on the sink and scratching back and forth. She looked like a little turtle that had just come out of its shell. He shouldn't have let his child come in to wash her hands. Baijuan immediately walked forward and saved little Baldy from the sink. Little Baldy's nose was red. Her eyes were wide open as she said, as expected, Master was right. If you don't respect Buddha, you will be punished. In the future, I will never speak ill of others behind their backs again. Who did you speak ill of? Baijuan thought that the child would cry. He reached out and rubbed little Baldy's nose. He began to reflect on whether he was incompetent as a brother. Even if he didn't like children very much, the situation was different now. Little Aju was sent over to be adopted by him, so she was his now. He should be more careful. Baijuan didn't dare to imagine how much water Little Light would have choked on if he hadn't discovered it in time just now. Chapter 11:18. Fortunately, he didn't go far. Baijuan looked at the pink little face in front of him and reflected deeply on himself. Little Baldy didn't know that his fall had destroyed Baijuan's grudge. He still said seriously, I just secretly scolded senior brother for being stupid in my heart. I won't scold him again in the future. If I really miss him, I'll go back to the mountain and beat him up. Baijuan was speechless. I think he would prefer it if you secretly scolded him in your heart. As a child, this was the first time he knew what it meant to not know whether to laugh or cry. Little Baldy's hands had not been washed yet. Baijuan took a look. The child's height was indeed too small. He could barely reach the sink. Without thinking, he took little Baldy's little hand over. Bai Juan was originally a young master of a military family. It was also his first time serving someone. First, he applied a fragrant hand soap on a child's hand. Then, he turned on the tap and lowered his eyes to wash Aju's hand. Little Baldy looked at his hands that were full of bubbles and his eyes widened. This cute expression was very useful to Bai Juan. He felt that the child he adopted was completely different from other people's. It was not that he had never come into contact with children. Whether they were younger than him or about his age, they were always noisy. However, the child and his family was very cute. "I'm done washing," Little Baldy said as his little stomach started to growl. Only then did Bai Juan really believe that the child was really hungry and not just saying it casually. Fortunately, Auntie Wang cooked quickly. When she heard that the young master wanted to eat vegetarian food, she brought back a little monk. She chopped long beans and shallots and placed them in a wooden basin. Then, she fried 6 eggs and placed them in it. She added a little peanut sesame oil and 13 spices and mixed them together to form white vegetable buns. The buns were steamed in the pot, and the other side was used to make rice porridge. There were dates in the rice porridge. After it was cooked, Auntie Wang started the fire again and made braised eggplant, governor's tofu, cold cucumber, and some bean paste buns. These were basically the children's favorite foods. As soon as Little Baldy followed Bai Juan down, he smelled the thick fragrance of the buns and ran over following the fragrance. He saw a woman standing in the kitchen. Little Baldy's happy little face immediately changed. She quietly moved towards Bai Juan. "Little brother, why is there a woman in the house? Isn't it very scary?" Bai Juan recalled what the child had said about the woman at the foot of the mountain being a tiger. He could not help but laugh. "Auntie Wang is not scary. Look, she is still cooking for you." "Cooking?" Little Baldy clung to Bai Juan's back and poked her little bald head out. She sized up Auntie Wang, who was smiling at her. "Just like senior brother Xian Hong in the temple, do you care about our meals?" Bai Juan nodded. Little Baldy immediately straightened his back. "That's not scary. Those who can cook are not scary." Auntie Wang had long been amused by the child's argument. In addition, little Aju was already very likable. Her small face was round, and her skin was fair and tender. Coupled with her big bright eyes, anyone who saw her would like her. The vegetable buns at the side were not cooked yet, but the small bean bun was already ready. It was originally bought from the supermarket and could be eaten after heating it up. Now, it was just ready to be eaten. When Auntie Wang saw the child looking at her eagerly, she knew that the child was hungry. She took a small bean bun from the pot and handed it to Xianzhou. Little Baldy was stunned by this sudden surprise. Then, he stretched out his 2 chubby little hands and held the small bean bun very preciously. He bowed and said, "Amitabha." "Thank you, benefactress." Benefactress. Auntie Wang could not help but want to laugh when she heard this title. The bean bun was still very hot. Little Baldy held it back and forth with his 2 little hands. Just as he opened his mouth to take a bite, he was stopped by Bai Juan. Little Baldy raised his head, and his cat tail was still wagging. "Little brother, do you want to eat it too?" "I'm not eating." Bai Juan pulled the child to a chair at the dining table and sat down. Then, he took his small bean bun and placed it on the plate. He first poked a hole with wooden chopsticks and blew on it. When he felt that it was not hot anymore, he fed it to Xianzhou. Little Baldy howled and took a big bite. "Sweet. How could the bean paste not be sweet?" Bai Juan chuckled and reached out to wipe Little Baldy's mouth. He continued to feed him with chopsticks. Bai Juan was not old to begin with. No matter how smart he was still a 9-year-old child. Now that he was feeding Little Baldy, who was 2 sizes smaller than him, the scene always looked beautiful. On the other hand, Auntie Wang was a little stunned as she watched from the side. Although their young master did not have a delicate temper, he had never been so close to anyone before. The children in the courtyard basically listened to their young master and were not naughty in front of him at all. This was not because of the Bai family's military rank, but because the young master gave people the temperament of a superior person just by standing there. Those children were all well behaved when they saw the young master, and the young master never used other people's things. Now, he was actually feeding the child bean bun. In fact, this was not a big deal. If Auntie Wang knew that her young master not only knew how to feed the child, but also how to wash the child's hands, she would definitely be extremely shocked. 1 bean bun was obviously not enough for little Baldy. After it was gone, little Ajou turned her head to look at Auntie Wang again. Auntie Wang's heart softened when she saw that pair of big watery eyes. She opened the lid of the pot and wanted to get another one for the child. "You're not allowed to eat anymore." Bai Juan's voice was very indifferent. "What did Buddha say? You have to eat proper lunch. Now that you're eating so many bean buns, how are you going to eat vegetables and porridge later?" Little Baldy frowned. "I can eat them all. When the vegetable buns are cooked later, you can eat them with the vegetables." Bai Juan rolled up the monk robe for her. "Only then will you grow taller." In the temple, there were usually more staple foods and very few vegetables. However, little Baldy always had more than others. Woolly Buddha also said that you should eat more vegetables. Although little Baldy felt that it was a pity, she still obediently put down her chopsticks and sat on the chair, waiting for the meal to start. Auntie Wang's movements were even faster this time. She stirred the pot, and not long after, the steamed buns and stir-fried vegetables were served on the dining table. There were also a few small plates for vinegar and chili oil. Little Baldy liked to eat spicy food the most, so there was no need for Bai Juan to feed her. She held a meat bun dipped in vinegar and chili oil in one hand, and a small spoon in the other to drink the porridge. The child ate very well, and even Bai Juan felt that he had an appetite. However, just as he lowered his head, he saw that little Baldy finished the steamed buns in her hand. Then, there was the second, the third, the 6th. Bai Juan turned his head and saw that the silly child's mouth was full of food. Her cheeks were bulging, and she moved her mouth like a little squirrel. She did not forget to lower her head to drink a mouthful of porridge, and there was still a steamed bun skin stuck to the corner of her mouth. Chapter 11:19. The white cat had already jumped to the side when little Baldy was eating. Now, only little Baldy was left to meet Bai Juan's probing gaze with wide eyes. The child scratched his head in embarrassment and explained shyly, "Woolly Buddha said that I need to eat more because I'm growing. But I just counted. There are 25 buns in the pot. I'll eat 8 and give the rest to my brother, Auntie Wang, and Uncle Lu. If that doesn't work, I'll go and snatch other people's food. Isn't there someone in the courtyard with a lunchbox? There must be food inside." Auntie Wang had originally planned to fry the 25 big buns in water at night, but she didn't expect that the child could eat so much. Bai Juan, on the other hand, was very good at grasping the main point. In the future, you're not allowed to snatch other people's food. If you're hungry, just tell me. These buns are all for you. You can eat as much as you want, but you can't make yourself full, understand? As Bai Juan spoke, he took out a piece of paper from the paper box and wiped the child's mouth. Little Baldy's eyes widened. "But if I finish it all, then little brother won't have anything to eat." Auntie Wang will continue. As soon as Bai Juan said this, Auntie Wang smiled and said, "That's right. Young master, there are plenty of buns at home. Eat as much as you want. Amitabha, my Buddhist name is Xianzhou. Little Baldy stretched out his hand and swallowed the food in his mouth. Then, he looked at Auntie Wang seriously and said, "Benefactress, you can call me Nine." Auntie Wang saw how adorable the little monk was. She reckoned that he had just returned to the secular world not too long ago and was still calling her poor monk. Baijuan moved little Baldy's chair closer to him so that it was easier to take care of the child. When little Baldy saw that there were still steamed buns, she said to Baijuan very seriously, "Then I will suppress my appetite." "So you ate 6 steamed buns in one go while suppressing your appetite? Not to mention the little bean bun just now." Baijuan pressed his forehead. Why did he feel that he had adopted a little foodie? This meal was particularly delicious. The steamed buns were dipped in chili oil, and from time to time, a refreshing cucumber would be slapped with a pair of chopsticks. This was the typical way of eating in the north. This was what people in the capital liked. In the past, sauced beef would definitely appear on the table. Sprinkled with a special sauce, it tasted especially good in summer. However, with little Baldy around today, Baijuan did not eat any meat dishes. He just ate the porridge and the steamed buns. His appetite was not worse than usual. On the contrary, because he was accompanied by the child, he even ate some more dishes. Little Baldy's favorite dish was the governor's tofu. This was a local dish, and the way it was cooked was different. It was like adding egg juice to the tender tofu. It melted in the mouth and was extremely delicious. After eating for about half an hour, little Baldy propped up his round belly and said to Auntie Wang, "Amitabha. Thank you, benefactress." Baijuan saw the child like that and was afraid that she would not be able to digest it well, so he pulled her over and rubbed her small stomach twice. Little Baldy did not understand why Baijuan would do such a thing. After being stunned for a moment, she also imitated Baijuan's actions and wanted to rub Baijuan's back. "Stop fooling around." Baijuan blocked the child's hand. "Are you okay?" Little Baldy thought for a moment and decided to tell the truth. "Actually, I can still eat 5 more vegetable buns, but Auntie Wang is too tired from cooking, so I'll save some for tonight." Baijuan was speechless. It seemed that he should find a helper for Auntie Wang. Little Baldy blinked her big eyes twice and felt that something was not right. Why did no one ring the bell even after she had finished eating? Then when was she going to start chanting the scriptures? Thinking of this, little Baldy was very conflicted. One had to know that when she was in the temple, she had already started chanting the scriptures at this time. Of course, in fact, she was not very interested in chanting the scriptures. The main point was that after chanting the scriptures, she would play wrestling games with the martial nephews of the warrior monk Hall. If she did not chant the scriptures, how could she wrestle? Little Baldy was anxious and reached out to grab Baijuan's sleeve. Baijuan drank his tea and had a copy of The Little Prince in his hand. Seeing that the child's forehead was sweating, he asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" "If I don't chant the scriptures, Buddha will blame me." Little Baldy explained incoherently, "But we don't ring the bell here." Others might not understand this sentence, but Baijuan, who had also lived in the temple, understood the work and rest time there. He raised his eyes and looked at the clock in the hall. "You can read the scriptures from now on. I will tell you when it ends." As Baijuan said this, he bent down, picked up the little girl, and placed her on the sofa. Little Baldy trusted her new little brother very much. She crossed her legs and began to chant the scriptures devoutly. The child's voice was not loud, and it still carried a soft and childish tone. To Baijuan, not only did this not feel noisy, but it also had a different kind of tranquility. Even the sun outside did not seem so big. However, the good times did not last long. Little Baldy had only been chanting the scriptures for less than half an hour when a group of children came in from outside. These children were all from the military compound. It could be said that each of their families was very powerful and often came to the Bai family. The soldiers outside definitely would not stop them. The child in the lead was a little tyrant. Usually, he only obeyed Bai Juan. As soon as he entered the door, he saw a little monk meditating there. He immediately felt a little confused. What's going on? Where did this monk come from? There's not a single strand of hair on his head. Has he been shaved? Why did this little monk appear in Brother Bai's house? Hearing the discussions around him, Master Li took out the wooden stick that they had used to play ball just now. He lowered his voice and warned, "All of you, be quiet. Bai Juan is not here. He must be taking an afternoon nap. If you wake up Brother Bai, I won't accept you as my underlings." Then how do we deal with this little monk? There was a girl there. She was wearing a very virtuous princess dress, but she looked at a Jew with displeasure. If she was not mistaken, the little monk's leg was covered with Bai Juan's small blanket. Usually, she could not even touch Bai Juan's things. How could this little monk be covered with a small blanket? The children were jealous for no reason. Master Li also recognized the blanket. Thinking about it carefully, he was the one who grew up wearing the same pants as Bai Juan. Where did this little monk come from? He had never even heard of him. Little gangster Li had been mischievous since he was a child. When he saw the little monk sitting there motionless, he winked at the two children standing on his left and right. He wanted to show the little monk who was in charge of him and let him know who was in charge here. Chapter 11:20. The two children were less than 10 years old. They looked at each other and prepared to use military boxing on the little monk's head. Li Hailu didn't let them hit his head at all. He was shocked. What if such a soft little monk became stupid with one punch? That was illegal. Li Hailu was about to open his mouth and shout, but his voice was stuck in his throat. That was because the two children who were near little Baldy were thrown to the ground with a boom. Their movements were so fast that no one knew what had happened. Little Baldy opened her eyes. She stretched out her little claws and grabbed one of the fists that wanted to hit her. Then, she threw the young man to the side like she was throwing trash. Clang! The young man was thrown to the ground and was stunned for a while. Li Hailu watched from the side with his mouth wide open. He didn't recover for a long time. Damn it, where did this little Vidra come from? It seemed that he had to fight in person. Little gangster Li had really trained in the army. His raised leg with a sound was different from others. Little Baldy's eyes suddenly lit up because of his actions. Since the other party was so serious, she couldn't be careless. Therefore, little Baldy reached out and grabbed Li Hailu's ankle. Then, she directly lifted Li Hailu up with both hands. The people around them were dumbfounded. How was this a little monk? He was clearly a Hercules. The two boys who had fallen to the ground covered their stomachs and silently thought that it was fortunate that the little monk only threw them out and didn't lift them up. It was too embarrassing to be lifted up. Li Hailu didn't expect that he would be lifted up horizontally by a little person who was 4 or 5 years younger than him. He was the leader of the Red Star Cluster. Where would he put his face in the future? Little brat, if you have the ability, put me down and fight me one-on-one. Don't you feel ashamed to lift me up like this? Little Baldy blinked her big eyes and shook her head seriously. I'm not ashamed. Li Hailu was speechless. Then why were you still thinking about it for a long time? I want to find a place that isn't too expensive and throw you down. Little Baldy was serious. When they were in the temple, the master had said that wrestling was fine, but they couldn't destroy the temple's facilities. Now that she was at little brother's house, all the more she shouldn't break anything. If Buddha found out, she would be blamed. Master Li did not believe the little monk. Little brat, open your eyes and take a look. We have more people than you. Little Baldy couldn't be bothered with him. So what if he had more people? There were more than 40 martial nephews in the temple, but they were all thrown by her. If she could fight, she would not fight. Little Baldy's big round eyes turned, and he finally found a suitable position. In the middle of the empty hall. A loud bang was heard. He directly threw Li Hai-Lu to the ground. Li Hai-Lu was on the verge of tears. His shoulder was in so much pain. Little Baldy didn't even look at him. Instead, he squatted down and touched the wooden floor worriedly. Will it break? Little Gangster Li was speechless. He was the one who was going to break, not the floor. What are you guys still standing there for? Hurry up and attack. With Li Hai-Lu's order, a group of 8 or 9-year-old boys pounced on Little Baldy. Bang! 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 The people who fell to the ground were all on Li Hai-Lu's side. The 4-year-old Little Baldy was still standing steadily beside the sofa, like a little expert from the outside world. Seeing that he couldn't beat Little Baldy with his bare hands, Li Hai-Lu picked up the wooden stick and wanted to swing it at Little Baldy. Li Hai-Lu, stop right there. When Li Hai-Lu heard Bai Juan's voice, he immediately paused. Let me tell you, brother, this kid, before he could finish his words, he saw that Bai Juan had already walked past him and held Little Baldy's hand. He looked left and right. After confirming that she was fine, he raised his head and looked at the group of children in front of him with heavy eyes. Bai Juan, who had just gotten up from bed, was the one who was not to be trifled with. None of the children in the military compound did not know about this matter. Usually, Bai Juan looked like a little prince. He knew more things and knew more things than anyone else. Even the seniors were not as calm as him. But at this moment, the gloomy aura emitted from his body was so obvious. This had something to do with him being woken up and seeing his adopted child being bullied as soon as he went downstairs. Who allowed you to make a move? Bai Juan turned his head and looked at Li Hai-Lu. Li Hai-Lu, you even dare to use a stick in my house, don't you? Li Hai-Lu wanted to explain. Brother, no. I see that you're quite arrogant with a stranger here. Bai Juan touched the back of Little Baldy's head again. Seeing that the child was really fine, his anger subsided, and the expression on his face also calmed down a lot. He's not a stranger. He's my youngest junior brother. His name is Xianzhou. He's the little brat you didn't want to adopt. Li Hai-Lu shouted. Little Baldy was still a little confused. Weren't these people found by her little brother to wrestle with her? Amitba. This penniless monk's Buddhist name is Xianzhou. As Little Baldy spoke, she bowed very politely and then asked, Little brother, are you not willing to adopt me? Li Hai-Lu laughed. Dang, shut up. Bai Juan really wanted to drag his brother over and beat him up. Li Hai-Lu saw that Bai Juan's expression was not very good. He touched his prickly hair and swallowed the words that he wanted to say. Bai Juan picked up Little Baldy and put her in his arms. They sat on the sofa together and said to the child, Little brother is not unwilling to adopt you. There was a misunderstanding before. Li Hai-Lu was speechless. He clearly didn't want to adopt her. Bai Juan even said that he hated naughty children the most, especially those 3 or 4 years old. He had to let them know the rules when they came. Why was the current script completely different from what he had planned before? Moreover, this was the first time he had seen Bai Juan talk to someone so patiently. I believe in little brother. Little Baldy reached out and rubbed Bai Juan's face. Buddha Wooly said that little brother and I are fated. Buddha Wooly will not lie. Only by staying by little brother's side can Iju be safe. Even if little brother doesn't like Iju, it's normal. After all, little brother has never seen a Jew before. After we get to know each other, little brother will like a Jew more and more. Li Hailu was speechless. Hey, little monk, where did your mysterious confidence come from? However, he did not expect that Baizhuan would actually smile faintly at little Baldy in his arms and casually reply, yes. Li Hailu's eyes widened. Fuck, was this still the Baizhuan he knew? Chapter 11:21. Baizhuan seemed to know what Li Hailu was thinking. He raised his head and glanced at him. Sit down. I'll get Auntie Wang to cut some iced watermelons for you. Every time Baizhuan had this expression, Li Hailu would definitely be obedient. Because he knew that Baizhuan was different from him. What was that word called? The teacher had just taught them. What was it like to be happy or angry? In any case, it was very complicated. This was how children fought. When they heard that there was watermelon to eat, they all sat on the sofa. Although the children in the military compound had good living conditions, they were raised to be a little tiger-like. They were not delicate. Otherwise, they would definitely not give up after being beaten up like this. Some of them were in pain when they opened their mouths and faces. Of course, these people had their own ideas in their hearts. They were not afraid of their own brothers. Moreover, their fathers were all in contact with each other. They had cultivated family alliances since they were young. This was a tradition of the military compound. As they chewed on the watermelon, the group of tiger-like children did not forget to steal glances at the little monk sitting in Baizhuan's arms. After all, this child was too powerful. They had not met anyone who could overturn all of them. Of course, Baizhuan was an exception. Baizhuan was their Prince Charming. However, why was Baizhuan so good to the child? One had to know that even their courtyard belle had never been hugged by Baizhuan. The courtyard belle was Lin Ziwen, who was sitting on the sofa in a princess dress and eating watermelon in small bites. She was also looking at a Jew, and the displeasure in her eyes was very obvious. A Jew did not hold the watermelon and eat it. Baizhuan specially asked Auntie Wang to cut the watermelon into small pieces for the child. She took a small fork and put it into her mouth. Little Baldy wanted to hold the bowl and eat by herself, but Baizhuan felt that if he had not gone up to sleep just now, his child would not have been able to stand being bullied. Therefore, he held little Baldy in his arms and fed her mouthful by mouthful. Baizhuan usually did not care who bullied the child in the end. As long as the other party made a move on his child, it would be his child who was bullied. Young Master Bai had such a mighty and domineering value. It was difficult for him to change since he was young. Little Baldy was also obedient. He was already smaller than the average person. He sat in Baizhuan's arms and ate with a cat on his head. Master Li finished his piece of watermelon and wiped his mouth. Baizhuan, you can't raise a child like this. My father said that when you raise a child, you have to give him a red date. Look at him teasing me all day. I still have the mark of his kick this morning on my butt. Scram. Baizhuan slowly wiped little Baldy's mouth. He did not want to accept other people's views on education at all. Of course, he had to pamper his adopted child. The other older children had never seen such a small monk before. In addition, little Baldy's head was very delicate. Every part of his body was round and smooth. Just looking at him made people want to pinch him. Thinking of this, Li Hailu stretched out his hand. Baizhuan immediately glared at him. You don't want your claws anymore. Baizhuan, no, I just want to help you guide him. Li Hailu said seriously, my mother has said since I was young that this brat is very difficult to take care of. It's hard for you to take care of a child by yourself, right? I'll help you share the burden. Baizhuan slowly smiled. You don't have to share the burden. If you come over again, I won't let you copy my homework. Don't do that. Li Hai-lu still wanted to say something. Little Baldy chanted, Amitabha. Woolly Buddha said that only bad children will be beaten by their parents. Judging from the character of your sneak attack just now, you really do need to be taught a good lesson with a stick. Li Hai-lu was speechless. Woolly Buddha. Where did this little unearthed cultural relic come from? That's the thought of an old person. Do you understand feudalism? Do you understand superstition? Now, the most important thing is personality. Li Hai-lu said proudly, Xianzhou, right? From now on, follow your brothers. You're too rustic. You'll be eliminated by society. Little Baldy did not understand. He turned his head and asked Bai Juan, Little brother, will a Jew be eliminated by society? No. Bai Juan patted the child's head. A Jew will be raised by me in the future. Li Hai-lu was instantly dumbfounded when he heard this. If he could be raised by Bai Juan in the future, it would indeed be difficult for him to be eliminated by society. However, Little Baldy frowned and shook his bald head. No, in the future, little brother will be raised by me. My mother said that if you want to be a temple abbot, you have to be financially independent. You have a mother. Li Hai-lu was shocked. He, who was dumbfounded the whole time, only felt that the little monk in front of him was an unearthed cultural relic. It was really strange that he actually had a normal family relationship. Little Baldy raised his eyebrows seriously. You don't. Could it be that you jumped out from a crack in the rock? Isn't that monkey's son? What the hell, he was actually speechless. At this time, Lin Ziwen questioned, if you have a mother, why don't you live with her? Why do you want to come to the Bai family? And you're not related to the Bai family by blood, right? Why are you calling Bai Juan brother? Do you want to stay in the Bai family in the future? Do you think a poor little monk like you is worthy? When Little Baldy heard this, his big eyes dimmed. He didn't want to stay in the Bai family and not leave. Master said that I want to be with little brother. I can only look for mother and the others when I'm 12 years old. I won't stay in the Bai family for free. Little Baldy said seriously, I will protect little brother. Don't joke around. Brother Bai Juan needs a little pee, clang. Before Lin Ziwen could finish her words, the fruit plate on the table was kicked over by someone. The person who kicked the table was none other than Bai Juan. Li Hai-lu had long said that Bai Juan was more ruthless than anyone else when he fought. If anyone wants to say another word, get out. Bai Juan's good-looking little face turned cold. What do you mean? You came to my house to bully my younger brother. He's only 4 years old, and you guys want to beat him up. Why? I've already exposed this matter, and you guys still won't let it go, right? Lin Ziwen, he's my adopted junior brother. If he doesn't live with me, who will he live with? Even if he stays in our Bai family for the rest of his life, what does it have to do with you? After Bai Juan finished speaking, he carried Little Baldy up and went up to the second floor with great effort. The group of children downstairs were a little stunned. Thinking about it carefully, what they had done this time was indeed wrong. After hearing Bai Juan's words, their faces felt even hotter. Everyone looked in Lin Ziwen's direction. Lin Ziwen burst into tears immediately. She ran out of the villa with a pretty face. In the bedroom on the second floor, Bai Juan was still angry. He rarely got angry because many things were under his control. But the child in his arms was like him in the past. After losing his parents, he had lived with his grandmother for a period of time, and people would say the same thing about him. If it wasn't for the reason at home, which child wouldn't be willing to live with their parents? He had only brought the child home for a day. First, he accidentally let the child get hurt at noon, and now he had to suffer such grievances. Chapter 11:22. Bai Juan clenched his fingers tightly. After waking up, the symptoms of hypoglycemia made him reach out and press his forehead. Little Baldy still had a piece of watermelon in his mouth. He stretched out his small hand and patted Bai Juan's head. Little brother, Woolly Buddha said that if you are always angry, you will grow old. You look quite old to begin with, so don't be angry. Bai Juan was speechless. His child's ability to comfort people could really infuriate the living to death. He finally understood why the senior brothers on the mountain always talked about Little Baldy in a loving and hateful tone. I'm not angry anymore. Don't take those people's words to heart. Bai Juan's voice faded. They are not me, and they can't be the head of the Bai family. From the moment you entered the Bai family, you are a child of the Bai family, my younger brother. Little Baldy nodded. Seeing that Bai Juan seemed to have a headache, he stretched out his soft and tender little hand and massaged Bai Juan's temples. Woolly Buddha said that there will always be all kinds of people in the world. There is no need to punish yourself with other people's thoughts. Lin Ziwen, aren't you angry that she said you? Bai Juan was still worried that the child would think too much. I'm not angry. Little Baldy shook his head first, then leaned close to Bai Juan's ear and said seriously, I just think that stupid senior brother is right. The women at the foot of the mountain are indeed tigers. I can't ignore the other types just because Auntie Wang is good. I will pay attention in the future. Oh. How will you pay attention? Bai Juan felt that the little hand pressing on his head was very comfortable. He just hugged the little person and lay on the bed. He was not worried about the situation downstairs. With Li Hailu watching, there would not be any trouble. Little Baldy's big eyes were round. How else can I pay attention? Of course, I will beat her up when she talks about me. With such a confident tone, even the best student, young Master Bai, could not help but twitch his mouth twice. How should he educate his child? In the future, he should talk more and not do more. This seemed to be a relatively long process. Bai Juan didn't know if he sighed or not, but since that day, for the first time, young Master Bai had the thought of wanting to protect someone. Little Baldy sat on the bed and was still rubbing Bai Juan's head. Then, she seemed to have thought of something, and her little face was very serious. Little brother, I'm not poor. I can support you, so you don't have to worry. Yes. Bai Juan answered, but in fact, he did not take the little fellow's words to heart. He just felt that with such a milky child in his arms, he even felt comfortable with his eyes closed. When little Baldy heard that Bai Juan had agreed, she immediately became happy and rubbed Bai Juan's head even harder. Li Hailu sneaked up and saw this scene. He knew that Bai Juan had never been able to sleep well. It was probably related to the death of his uncle and auntie. Bai Juan was always more right than them. He could not guess what his brother was thinking. It was just that the Bai clan was usually empty and devoid of people. Now that the little monk was here, it suddenly became a lot livelier. Little Baldy was the first to see little Gangster Lee. She narrowed her eyes and looked very dangerous. It was as if the other party had entered a territory that he should not have entered. Those who did not know would think that he had provoked some little beast. Li Hailu hurriedly stretched out his hand to surrender. I'm here to apologize to your senior brother. I'm not a bad person. Little monk, it's not right for you to look at me like that. My Dharma name is Xianzhou. The people at the foot of the mountain are always so difficult to communicate with. Little Baldy was very puzzled as to why he refused to call her by her name properly. Bai Juan listened to the little fellow's emphasis and smiled lightly as he patted the child's head. His memory is not good. He always gets a bad score during exams. Bai Juan, you can't smear me in front of your younger brother like this. How can you set up the correct values for him like this? Li Hailu shouted. Bai Juan said very slowly, "You're a bad example." Li Hailu was silent for a moment. He looked at Bai Juan and coughed lightly. "You're not angry anymore, right?" Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. "What do you think?" "Don't be angry. I have a lot of games to play here. Let's fight online later." Li Hailu used his fist to touch Bai Juan's shoulder. Bai Juan sat up with little Baldy in his arms and said indifferently, "Not interested." "Then tell me, what should we do?" Li Hailu's face was flushed red. "It's our brothers who didn't do well in this matter. Actually, I agree with your way of doing things. As the saying goes, women are like clothes, brothers are like hands and feet. You were right to be angry at Linziwen. We support you. You should do this for your younger brother. But you can't abandon the group of brothers downstairs, right?" Bai Juan smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "I mean, don't play online games and play something else. A Jew has just arrived. When it's not hot outside, let's take her for a stroll in the courtyard." "Ah, I see." Li Hailu's eyes lit up. He said to little Baldy, "This entire courtyard belongs to us brothers. We'll take you to catch a bird in a while." Little Baldy's face was full of question marks. Silly bird. She didn't understand. It turned out that people who got a bad score couldn't speak clearly. Bai Juan picked up the little fellow again. "She's small, so she can't walk very far. Don't worry, leave it to me." After saying that, Li Hailu ran downstairs to prepare. Auntie Wang looked at the sun outside. First, she brought the handmade mung bean soup and mint tea that were frozen in the fridge for the children to drink to relieve the heat. Then, she made some fruit ice cream. The Bai family did not have cola soda. In fact, the more a child came from a military family, the more they controlled their food. The Bai family was even more strict. 7 or 8 older children sat on the sofa, discussing how to catch more birds. It was as if they were going to win a battle. When it was past 4 in the afternoon, the sun outside still hadn't set much. Auntie Wang was worried that little Baldy would get sunburned again, so she found a hat that Bai Juan wore when he was young. It was a nondescript combination with the kasaya, and it looked cute. Bai Juan saw that the child was looking up at him with her round little face. Only then did he realize that as the head of the family, he should buy some new clothes for the child. He couldn't let the child come to the city and still wear a monk's robe. Li Hailu was a carefree person. How could he notice the little monk's attire? He raised his hand excitedly. "Let's go." With such an order, the group of children ran out in a flurry. Little Baldy was also affected by this enthusiasm. She ran to the front of the group of people. When she turned around again, behind them, there was no one behind them. Li Hailu and the others were also dumbfounded. Was the little monk in front of them a human? Why did they feel that it was like a set of flaming wheels with acceleration and deceleration? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.